Yeah, so it's a bop, right?
Definitely.
It's a bop.
Inaugural. It's gonna be my new
Yeah.
like Christmas ones. Like,
Yeah, like a Britney Spears knockoff Christmas album that I'm gonna be dropping this Christmas.
are you gonna
like I said, like
musician name?
Michael.
So what? What's
Do you
up?
have like a musician name?
Oh yeah.
Oh no. Okay, so one of my chatters came up with one, but God, I can't remember. If someone in the chat could remind me. I know Anthony made it up. Oh, it was like the crimbler. Yeah, the crimbler, because it's a whole thing. Because I have this alter ego that I call Crimes, based off of Grimes. Because I don't like anything about Grimes' politics, but I do like her aesthetic. So when I want to capture that, like, my community calls me Crimes, Kira and Grimes. So I guess now my Christmas album name is going to be the Crimbler.
Crimbler, yeah.
But we're gonna be releasing a Christmas album, and so we've been working on it for all of 48 hours. I'm very excited about it.
Do you know about the Christmas song that was produced as part of my fundraiser for trans kids a few years ago?
No.
It's called "Do They Know It's Christmas in Hell?" It's by Left at London and Molly Noise, and it's basically about Thatcher and Reagan. The gang's all there, and they don't even know it's Christmas because they're in hell. And it's you don't find out it's Christmas if you're in hell. You get tortured.
Question answered.
Wow.
Like I thought I would have to listen to the song to find out if they did in fact know.
I think there are
Christmas in
deeper
hell.
questions that you can answer by listening to the song, so I think it's still worthwhile.
I think it's so weird that I've never heard of that Christmas song. I wonder why.
Yeah.
Anyways,
so it's Red Planet. Check it out.
Yeah.
Whoa, it's that show
Welcome,
where we
everyone.
talk about based stuff. Welcome to Red Planet.
How's everyone? How's everyone? All our audience doing? Everyone. And by the way, when I say how is our audience doing, I am talking to our listeners as well. I want you to know that we are from the past, but don't let that stop you from answering out loud. How are you doing?
Yeah, if you're
How
on
are
the
you
bus
feeling?
or whatever, just yell it.
Yeah, this is some
Wherever
space,
you are right
some
now.
empty, some quiet space for you to reply.
Yeah. Here, how are you doing?
That's
Oh,
amazing.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
that's-
okay.
I'm really
Me
glad to
too.
hear
Great
that.
to
That's
hear
cool. Yeah. Mhm. Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's early
Follow-up
morning.
question: what's the most base thing you did this week?
I didn't even
Tim does not get the gap to answer. I'm just like, here's the question. Here's the question.
But Tim is right here, though. He's not even like hypothetical, but you're not giving him the gap.
We have a
Yeah,
schedule
I mean-
to stick to. Conrad will whip me if we don't do this.
We're already enforcing the schedule. We're 5 minutes in, and we're already running over time. Yeah, I don't know what the most base thing I did this week was. I was trying to think about that because I only woke up 20 minutes ago or something, and I was racking my brain. And yeah, I literally
You exist. That's base.
I know. Yeah, I exist despite it all. Yeah, I was thinking I basically just worked
Bestie,
really
same.
busily. It was pretty hectic at work this week, and then yeah, and then I came home, and then I went to sleep, and then I woke up, and here we are.
I can.
So,
Same. Relatable.
Yeah,
I can relate to that.
Well, so then tell me, what was the most base thing that you did this week?
The most base thing I did this week. Well, for the people that have been keeping up with my personal life, that I blare, I screech loudly on public forums everywhere. I am getting back into the dating world, so I've been doing some online dating, which is something that I've kind of been not too keen on doing because of the fact that I have an online persona and I don't really know how that would play out. But I've been trying to do some online dating, and one of the base things that I've been doing is making sure that communism is something that is very openly a standard that I have. So I've been getting a lot of guys in my in my DMs trying to date me that aren't fully communist, but they're trying to be communist for the sake of trying to date me, trying to get in my pants. And so what I'm doing is I'm really making them have to explain themselves, and now all of a sudden they're getting oh, that's actually a really good idea. Oh, I never thought about it like that.
Theory pop quiz.
You should do a pop quiz on how to blow up a pipeline on the first date.
No, that's a great suggestion, Sophie. So far I've dated a couple guys, or gone on dates and talked to a few guys that none of which have been communist yet, but they are like
Are
really
they
trying.
now?
I'm either pilling them ever so slightly, or they're faking being pilled, which is very possible. But I have to think, like, what
Fake
if
it till you make it.
right, right. But I have to think, like, if there was like a chick on the internet that you like really, really, really wanted to date, but she's like, listen, you're wonderful in every way. It's just, I'm sorry, I only date communists. Wouldn't that do something to you? Wouldn't that like do a little like, oh, okay. So that is the most base thing I've done this week. I've dangled my my pussy for people to chase after, and then be like, no, you have to be a communist. That's my praxis.
This is the people's pussy. Back off.
Yeah. I feel like, you know, there's like that thing where if you are an internet personality and people get familiar with your politics, they get familiar with like the things you're saying or whatever, and then they like, you know, like they think they agree with you on a lot of stuff, they really identify with what you're saying or whatever like that, but they're not a communist. And I feel like it's kind of, I guess, like a short jump for them to be like, oh, okay, like maybe if I really like this person and everything they say sounds really good, maybe I am one of those, you know, maybe I need to look into that.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's kind of, if I wasn't so staunch with my values, it would have worked the opposite way for me. Right. All these like milquetoast liberals that are like, I voted for Bernie, and then that's the extent of their radical, you know, leftism. If I wasn't so like staunch with how I am a communist, that would have nudged me the other direction. I think I'd be like, oh, I'm like the only person here who doesn't, has these like, so like, it's not doing that to me, just for the record, but I do think it completely can work in the other direction. And so far it's been really interesting to see that happen. Also, did you know that men will just like lie about a lot of their values? You think they just like lie about them?
You think men would do that? Like go on the internet and tell lies?
I know. I was gonna say that's like what Twitter is.
That's wild. Wow.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Anyways, that's the most base thing I've done this week. Just radical promiscuity, I suppose, or something. Yeah, we'll come up with a name for it.
For the listeners hearing us only, you may have noticed that you have not heard our beloved Peanut Mule's voice this week. That's because the most base thing Mule did this week is take the week off, because he worked on a really big video and now he's having a chill. And that we commend that. That's good. That's a good way to go.
Made a fantastic video, by the way. We watched it on my channel. He did commentary. It was a really, really great show, and I'm really proud of Mule, because that was it was just like a phenomenal video he put together.
Yeah, it's his first media analysis one, and it's one of the best media analysis video essays I've seen in like years, honestly.
That's awesome. I need to check that still.
We covered everyone's base things, right?
No,
Sophie.
I'm just waiting to be asked.
You're just so based that I forget that you have to actually go out of your way to like say something based, you know.
Yeah,
but you're just.
I'm sure.
Hey, Sophie, my good friend Sophie.
Yes, Bestie, what's up?
You look very cute today.
Thank you. The podcast listeners are missing out. I agree.
Oh yeah, they are missing out.
It's a good incentive to show up to the stream, actually, because like they won't be seeing the fits.
Or check out the YouTube or subscribe to the Patreon when you get early access to the videos.
The whole team is dripped out today, actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm wearing my like it's very cold here, so I'm wearing a jumper, which I normally, you know, not a big kind of knit jumper kind of dude. But,
I'm liking a sweater boy arc for Tim.
Sweater boy, yeah.
Tim heads are going wild right now seeing Sweater Boy Tim.
Yeah, sweater arc.
So Sophie, now that you tried to derail, so we'd have to apologize to you. Okay. Oh wow, Sophie, I'm so sorry. Sophie, what's the most basic thing you did this week?
Thank you for asking. I've actually been it's been a few weeks that it's been going on for, but it came to fruition this week. I've been growing reishi mushrooms, which are They're called, what are they called? Ling Chi in Chinese, or
Mm.
Reishi or Manentake in Japanese, which means like 10,000 year mushroom. And the
Ooh.
Chinese name means like the mushroom of immortality because it's apparently like really good for your health. It like boosts your immune system and helps you sleep and stuff. There are
Mm.
some people who want to like claim that it boosts sex drive. I don't think there's studies for that, and I wasn't growing it for that, but people claim a lot of stuff that it does
Yeah.
apparently. So I made some reishi tea, and it was if you have acquired the taste for the very earthy, grassy flavor that a lot of mushrooms
Mm.
have, it was a good tea. If you've not, it tastes like dirt.
Might be
I
a little
have,
much.
but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to everybody else.
Do you
Yeah,
feel more immortal than before you
I
drank the tea?
I think I do. I mean, I
Oh yeah.
don't know. I don't know that I felt especially mortal, but like I
No.
don't feel especially mortal now. So
Oh wow.
Hmm.
it's
Okay, yeah.
clearly working.
I've actually tried that tea because in the video game The Long Dark, that's one of the teas that you can harvest those mushrooms and brew the tea for antibiotic reasons. It's a survival game. So in case you have an infection, you can drink it. And because I'm such an impressionable person when I play video games that I like have to consume what's on in the video game. So I went out and bought some mushrooms, some reishi mushrooms, and brewed myself some tea. And it was, yes, it's very mushroomy. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. That was actually another most based thing. I don't know if I've already said this, but like it's not really my thing, and it wasn't this week, so it's kind of doubly not the thing. I'll still say it. A friend of ours is going to Armenia to see the same surgeon that I went to see, and Nat has volunteered to go with her. So we're making preparations for that, which is like going to be tricky to be without Nat for 3 weeks, but also like that's pretty based that she's doing that for our friend.
Yeah, that rules.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Sorry, I had to walk away. I had bread in the oven. I'm single and I'm baked bread all the time. It's just really hard for me.
Get a bun in the oven. That's what they say.
There are buns
But
actually. I made hamburger buns. So yeah.
so that's the hosts and the base things we did this week. But Kira, do you want to tell us, because we've actually had a submission, and before you tell us about it, let me just say we do want to know, you, the audience, what base things you've been doing. You can message us on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, or send an email to based@redplanetshow.com. Include your name and pronouns if you're cool with that, and we may shout it out in a later episode. So, Kira, what has someone from the audience been doing this week?
Yeah, so from our audience member, Osimo Grieve, they say, using leftover wood, I put together a tiny baby raised garden bed and covered it with anarchist type phrases. There are potatoes in the two ends and flowers in the middle, marigolds and dahlias. Oh, I love this. Eat the rich and your veg. Consent in the sheets. Free people. Dissent in the streets. Oh, I love that.
Hell
Respect
yeah.
existence respect existence or expect resistance. That's awesome. I love that.
Look
Very
at that
cool.
that pack of pink monster in the background as well. Amazing.
I noted that earlier, and I was like, Tim is not gonna be able to resist pointing out
it's what plants crave.
The half dozen pipeline punches. Yeah. Well, let us know if you've done some basic stuff, and we might talk about it on the show like we did just now.
Mm-hmm.
So on to the news, and the first piece of news I'm going to tell us about, it has to do with anti-trans stuff in the States. So you've been warned. Montana House of Representatives censures trans representative while passing anti-trans legislation. So people are aware that for months and years now, Republican states have been trying to pass legislation to try and destroy trans people's lives. This week, as part of this attack on trans lives, Montana state government passed a bill removing trans people from 40 sections of code, effectively gutting all legal protections for them by changing the language to revolve around biological sex, including in spaces where this would make the law nonsensical. Like people like TERFs like to talk about single sex spaces, but to be clear, they're very obviously gendered spaces, and it's not like the possession of a vagina or a penis that actually dictates who goes into which spaces. They're very upset about that idea, but ultimately that is how people, function. Like women want a space around women to like get changed for the gym or whatever, not a space around people with vaginas. Yeah, that's kind of what Montana's put through this week. That's the gist of the legal change they've made. There was also a bill effectively banning all trans healthcare for minors. So Montana Representative Zoe Zephyr, who is trans, condemned the bill at the start of the session. in a speech which told those supporting the bill, "I hope next time there's an invocation, when you bow your heads in prayer, you see blood on your hands." For this, House Majority Leader Sue Vinton called her comments disrespectful. Oh no, disrespect. Oh no. And a group of reactionary ghouls called the Montana Freedom Caucus called for her to be censured, which then made it impossible for Representative Zephyr to effectively do her job or interact with the process at all. Basically, like, she wasn't allowed to speak or like stand up to take the floor during the whole session.
Because of the Freedom Caucus.
Yes, yeah. They just love freedom.
It's wild how freedom has just like the word freedom, the connotations, that everything is just like probably one of the biggest like signifiers of a fascist group these days.
I've been saying this for a while, but the guy who made a Statue of Liberty out of the rubble of his house that was destroyed in a drone strike, he said, "This is what freedom brought me." And like when he's saying freedom, it's like the same as like these freaks. Like he's thinking about apple pie and Levi's and Bud Light, right? Well, I suppose they're not thinking of Bud Light anymore, right? But like, Coors or some shit. Because Bud Light is apparently transgender semen, according to a tweet that I saw this week, which makes me interested in drinking some Bud Light. Anyway, it's this code phrase which basically just means like American supremacy, Christian, Christo-fascist, white supremacist, like fascist American imperialism. Really, like,
I mean, I remember when like after 9/11, when McDonald's did the freedom fries thing, and it was like this very like goofy, like, I mean, yeah. I'm sure to a lot of patriots it was like a very great incentive, but like outside of
counter-revolutionary propaganda.
What the what is going on here? Like, this is literal parody, and it's only got worse since then.
A second nationalist propaganda has hit the gold notches. Where were we? But adding an insult to injury, they also the Republicans all willfully misgendered Zephyr while she was legally prohibited from responding. Freedom, we love freedom. That's not just bullying in a really ugly and pathetic way. The speaker who silenced Representative Zephyr during this session, Matt Regier, Regier, sounds like a guy with an address, skipped the censoring process and used his authority as speaker over both days of the session to silence her. Basically, there is a process that the House is supposed to go through, but the speaker can just do it on the spot, and that's what he did, and refused to engage in any kind of proper process. Just to put some horrible anti-trans news all together, so we don't have to keep on coming back to this, but also hopefully leave on a slightly lighter note. Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey, also sounds like a guy with an address, instated a tip line for people to basically turn in their trans neighbors, because that's the level of fascism that the GOP is operating at, while President Biden enjoys another ice cream. It's like to let
blue
people
ice
know
cream. It's blue.
Yeah, well.
So think about that.
Yeah,
I'm thinking
about it.
I'm thinking about it. This is basically, it was like an online email tip line for people to basically say, I think that they're transing the kids at the local school, or like my teenager started using pronouns or whatever. So people responded to it as as ridiculously as it is. So some people said things like, I walked past someone in the street and called them by accident. Let me just read a little bit from
someone recite the B movie scripts.
Yeah, so giggity giggity, this is wrong and immoral, giggity giggity. Someone wrote under the name Peter Griffin. Just reported my dog for being unladylike, said Twitter user Chris Graham. So So the tip line had to be removed pretty much immediately as people started flooding it with trolling, gibberish, and sincere appeals for the GOP to act like human beings, as well as more stuff. Madeline Searin, I'm not doing well with these crazy foreign-sounding American names today. These Americans think they can just have all kinds of wacky names. It's ridiculous. A spokesperson for Bailey is quoted saying, "Far-left activists are trying to impede parents' ability to shed light on what happened to their children. Lying, liar, lying, shut up, bitch."
It's so wild because it's like far right fucking fascists preventing parents from getting, like appropriate care for their children. It's like
Exactly. And they're like, they're stopping us from finding out what's going on at the schools. She went on to say, rather than standing on their supposed science to back up their facts, how are we supposed to do that when we show you the science and you ignore it and just do a fascism? They're resorting to trying to hack our system to silence victims of the exact network we're trying to expose. After journalists' inquiries, Siren offered no explanation what hacking had taken place. Presumably, she just means people trolled them. So, in conclusion, cry harder, die mad about it. The end.
The whole thing is like they set up these, like they don't have enough evidence of what they're saying actually happening. So they set up these systems where they're like, give us the tips, like tell them to us or whatever. And then they don't get anything, they get harassed or whatever like that, and they shut it down. But it's like like their whole narrative is that like these things are being hidden from them, that they're trying to expose it or whatever like that. And it's like, it's never enough for them to just not find anything or for it to just not be happening, because they're like, well, the whole thing is about it's a secret agenda and they're trying to blow the lid off it and stuff. So it's like there's no there's absolutely
almost
no
like it's like
outcome
a
to
religion,
that.
like a cult, like these unfalsifiable beliefs are being like propagandized and everyone keeps clinging to them harder and harder, even if they are thoroughly debunked.
It's like that quote that's like, if Jews didn't exist, anti-Semites would invent them.
Oh yeah, but it's like that's the thing though, right? It's like if they they would find something else, It's like, and they've always found something. It's bizarre. It's so like, yeah, ultimate brainworms.
Probably be relevant to the topic this week when we get to it, but yeah, I've been feeling more and more lately that fascism, like their bigotry, is not the reason. Like it's not even that they hate migrants or trans people or sex workers or whoever. Like it's just them picking on a marginalized group who they see as vulnerable and then bullying them, and then more people join in because they see the bullying is working. And like with trans people, it's just like you got a bunch of people who are going through a second puberty. Like it is pretty equivalent if you were just picking on a bunch of teenagers, and in a bunch of cases, it is literally picking on a bunch of teenagers. It's so fucked. Anyway, Kira, what's our next story?
Oh yeah. So I don't know if any of you recall, but Manuel Paez Terán, and I know I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, who is someone who was killed when he was defending the forest from Cop City expanding. Cop City in Atlanta, there's people defending the forest there, trying to just peacefully occupy so to prevent the expansion of Cop City. Police murdered this person, and I believe they go by Tortuguita. I hope I'm not mispronouncing this. I want to say Tortuguita, and they use they them pronouns for the record. So police killed them. But the police, of course, claimed that they were defending themselves and Tortuguita was armed and shooting and so on and so forth. So DeKalb County has just released the autopsy results. And turns out, well, let me first tell you what the police claimed. The police claimed that Tortuguita fired the first shot at the state trooper, and then the officers had to respond with gunfire. They also posted a photo of the gun that they claim fired a bullet into one of their officers, saying, quote, "The handgun is described as a Smith & Wesson M&P Shield 9mm. Forensic ballistic analysis has confirmed the projectile recovered from the trooper's wound matches Terán's handgun." But, and here comes the autopsy results, Tortuguita did not have any gunpowder residue on his hands or on their hands whatsoever. Which when you're, especially if you're like occupying a forest, you're not like, there's like, where would the gunpowder residue would be there? There's like no way that you could quickly like clean your hands off or anything. Like you're sitting in a tent in the middle of the forest.
Yeah, you're in a tent and you just fired gunpowder, like you just sprayed gunpowder residue all over the tent you're in, and you're like, I'm gonna get shot 57 times now, so I want people to think I didn't shoot the gun, so I'll quickly wipe my hands.
Yeah, no. So
it's wild. And also the witnesses in the area and stuff all, and I think even other cops, when quizzed on how many gunshots they heard, the number only lined up with like the cops, like with like what they had said. So it's kind of like, well, with what they had fired. So yeah, there was always overwhelming evidence that like they didn't actually shoot. Sorry, there. So yeah.
So for the record, just when Sophie said 57 shots, that's not an exaggeration. According to the autopsy, cops inflicted at least 57 gunshot wounds onto their body, including hands, torso, legs, and head. And this is a peaceful occupier of the forest.
Not to get too gory or whatever, like it isn't quite accurate to say that means there are 57 shots fired, but like it's still obviously a lot of shots. Like there can be at least 2 wounds from one bullet, right, in and out. But like, yeah, it's still, that's undeniably an enormous amount of overkill. Like,
yeah. So Tortu Guita's death has been ruled a homicide according to DeKalb County Medical Examiner's Office, but of course, the police are still investigating.
Yeah, and we've covered this a bunch of times, and it's like, I think it's important to remember that these are the forest defenders that were being labeled as terrorists by the media. Like they were literally people just camping in the forest. That over time the newspapers, the biggest newspaper, who is also like, it's owned by a guy that has a financial stake in Cop City, and like a bunch of other just completely wild things that would totally be a conflict of interest, right?
Stuff you would say was a bit far if you like wrote a dystopian movie.
Exactly, like if you were right, or like just one of those like American dramas about like like, oh, they're building this new thing or whatever like that, and you would want to make them look as evil as possible, and like you would just like invent all these things, but it's like, no, that's actually happening. And and so they just started referring to them as terrorists and kind of changing public opinion, obviously, kind of like creating this whole narrative that there were these violent Antifa terrorists or whatever like that in the forest, and that everyone had to be scared, and like they were doing these like terrible things. They were like, I think there was like one case of like there was like kind of like a little bit of a scuffle at one of the barriers or something like that, and then the way that the media reported on it was like just so deranged, like these newspapers saying like that it was like some kind of like like they were basically saying it was like like back in the days of like the George Floyd protests and stuff, like they were acting like the small thing was like this like this huge kind of like skirmish in the in the middle of a forest or whatever, but really it was just like it was just a protester and a cop or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. There's been this I mean, there's always that kind of dishonest reporting with cops, obviously, but like something I saw this week that really like stuck in my craw was just like, it was reporting on Posey Parker's little fash Nazi rallies. And I think it was one of the ones in Ireland. And like the facts of what was happening on the ground that you can see from social media is that like hundreds or thousands of people showed up to tell her to fuck off. And there were just barely any people on her side, and unable to find any way to, and it was peaceful, and they just like chanted that she should fuck off. Like, unable to say anything else. I saw an article, I don't remember what it was. It was some, purportedly like centrist or unbiased thing. It was the headline was like, cops form line between protesters on either side of a toxic trans like debate rally. And it was like, I mean, I can't even recall it properly because it was such a silly and bizarre sounding headline. It's like, why are you reporting that like cops made a line? Like what's that? Like also maybe you could tell us which way they were facing if you're going to report on the cops. Because that's funny thing I've noticed is that the cops always seem to face outwards from Posey Parker's rallies everywhere she goes. So strange.
Also, like, I hate how they always just refer to shit like that. It's like, oh, it's like the trans debate or whatever. It's like, there's no debate. Like, it's not like even Posey Parker and all that, they're not there to debate. Like, they're not. Yeah, they're just fucking fascists, which we will get into later in the episode. Well, the next one we've got is Extinction Rebellion floods central London with thousands of climate protesters. So, so just I think it was Saturday London time, right?
Yep, that's when it began. They've been calling it the big one.
Yeah, the big one. So they're planning this. Yeah, well, they've planned this gigantic protest, but they have said that they want minimal disruption, so it's accessible to everyone. And bring your kids, everything like that. To have like, I guess it's like, more of sometimes you go to a protest and it's like very much like squaring off with the cops. And sometimes you go and it's more of like a festival kind of vibe. It kind of seems like that's the kind of thing that Extinction Rebellion are trying to kind of cultivate here.
Yeah, it tends to be what they like to do at this point. I revisit, like, there are things that they've done in the past which have been incredibly anti-cop and like very well executed. Like I've said before about the big like column of people led by the drummers who just like forced the cops back when the cops were trying to push them out of the park a few years ago. Now it's just kind of like, let's go and chill out and hang out and do some various performances, which isn't, I'm not saying that's a completely useless thing. Yeah.
But yeah, so they had support from over 200 different organizations, including Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth. And it was on Saturday because it was Earth Day. So yes. Happy birthday, Earth. We gave you a special day.
Can't believe we figured out the exact birthday of the planet Earth. That's crazy.
So and aside from just the banner waving and they had all these people dressed in red with red veils and very evocative. But beyond the Parliament Square, thousands of activists staged a die-in by laying on the pavement at the mall, aiming to represent the potential future extinction of humanity due to global warming. The concept for die-in is like very, very. I don't know. It's kind of wild.
I've been in a few die-ins now because of.
Oh, really?
Between Extinction Rebellion ones and like trans medicine and like protesting the waiting lists. Like it's a pretty common tactic for trans people to show up outside like supposed healthcare institutions that are giving us absolutely no healthcare and then just do a massive die-in.
Yeah, I've seen other ones where it's like people have made like just like hundreds, thousands of like like gravestones or like things like that, and just filled like a public space and being like, okay, well, this is like from whatever cause it is, it's like this is how many people die every year or whatever like that, which I think can be also really kind of really powerful to see like all at one time. So London Mayor Sadiq Khan said that he passionately believes that this climate emergency has got to be tackled, and urged XR to protest in a way that is peaceful, lawful, and safe. I love that, like, the Mayor of London is like, I passionately believe we're going to do something about this. You guys stay safe, all right? And it's just like, man, like, if only our boy Sadiq knew someone that was in a position of power. If only someone who had like some level of authority.
He's just a small bean and he can't do anything. Poor Sadiq Khan. It's so sad. One thing that I've seen all over London this weekend, which I've really enjoyed, is so bus stop ads are like a paper, like a big paper ad inside the glass at a bus stop, right? And when people come to replace them, there's like a little keyhole. But this is like the same key for literally all bus stop ads, and apparently you can just get that key on Amazon. So a bunch of Extinction Rebellion protesters have I think they stole ads from other bus stops previously, and they've changed them to be like climate ones. I've put one into the chat, into the group chat. They've changed them to be like climate slogans instead. And honestly, like in some parts of London, it's like you go down the street and every single bus stop has been changed to Extinction Rebellion stuff, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. It's it's cool to see things like that being explored. Like, I'm a big fan of the idea of what is it called? There's a French word for it. The kind of like it's a word for taking, like they say, like, you know, like taking the tools of the capitalists and kind of like repurposing them for radical means. And yeah, a lot of it is around, you know, like advertising, particularly because, you know, advertising is such like a, it's like a such a quintessential capitalist thing that takes up so much space in our, you know, in public spaces, our day-to-day life. Detournement, that's it. Ghost is putting on the
Nice.
I was
chat.
going to say
Nice.
it's like reverse recuperation,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
no, it is. It's yeah, similar kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, I guess like the activists recuperating the I guess tools of capital or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, no, but it's yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, there's like a huge history of that kind of thing, like you know, like taking over billboards, and the little key lock thing is really interesting as well. There's pro gamer hack. A lot of tractors and heavy machinery is also the same. Yeah, like, you know, like a lot of companies that will have a standard key for like an entire range of vehicles, of heavy vehicles, and you can often just get that shit off AliExpress. So, you know,
That's crazy information that I'm sure no one will do anything with.
yeah,
Certainly not
yeah.
anything illegal.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Mayor of London thing as well. Sorry, I've just been thinking on this for a second about Sadiq Khan, like, because it was 420 this week as well, right?
Oh,
And I
Earth Day
just
and 420.
in the same week, crazy.
Yeah.
And like, you know, Sadiq Khan has kind of made some posturing about like maybe legalizing weed, you know, within London, or being, or the like that he is pro legalization. He obviously like knows people personally who've been like hurt by the war on drugs, but like there were Met officers like camping out in a big like sting operation at Finsbury Park this week, like knowing that people would take the opportunity of 420 to like go and smoke weed in the park. Like they deliberately like waited at the station and like, you know, obviously targeted a ton of black and brown people especially. And it's just like, you know, if you're pro legalization and you want to stop this shit, like you could tell them, hey, it's all in good fun. We yes, there might be crimes, but like maybe you could fuck off. Like you have take a chill day, you know, and not just like ruin people's lives for nothing, like for wanting to enjoy the good leaf in the park.
Yeah, there's in I actually, I'm not even sure if it's been done for a couple of years, but they used to have a thing, it was called J Day over here, and it was like, you know, like everyone would just go to big public parks. There was like a couple in particular that I think it was kind of like designated as like these are the places that, you know, like in this city everyone's going to go to, like Albert Park or whatever. And the police would kind of be around, but it was very much like turn a blind eye, because it's kind of like, you know, it's probably too much trouble to actually, you know, like if they do start picking on people or whatever, then it's becomes a bigger thing or whatever. So it's like they're there just to kind of, you know, like facilitate order or whatever that means, you
Like,
know.
not that I imagine like a bunch of stoners in a park are probably going to start a riot, but like, you know, if you do go and start arresting people when a ton of people have gathered together to like declare their like right to just smoke some weed and chill out, like it's not going to be taken well. And also like you're going to like arrest like one or two people and give them like so much of a hard time for the rest of their lives, with like 100 other people, like, you know, hundreds of other people like clearly in view, who just like run away as soon as they see the cops, and you know it's just the unlucky one who gets like those consequences. It's like, I don't know, I think it might have sounded like a bit silly what I just said about like the mayor, but it's been a thing that has been practiced by local administrations the world over before, like that when they ultimately accept that there's not a particular harm going on and they want to expend their resources in more useful ways. Like, I don't know, there are a lot of open rape cases that the Met Police could be looking into. Maybe they could look at some of those charges against police officers for abusing their families, or kidnapping and raping people or some shit like that. You know, and it's like so they're just like, yeah, we're just gonna look the other way for this specific thing. It is a thing that does happen, and like, you know, that's somewhere where you could really put your money where your mouth is.
I mean, police regularly exercise this when people do call them in cases of sexual assault. They will convince victims to not press charges because you don't want to ruin the rest of his life, so on and so forth. But the reverse is oddly true when it comes to like cannabis consumption.
Yeah, it's fucking wild. Yeah, I've seen that before. Like people like it's like people that I went to school with that have like actually served time in prison for like, just like possession and stuff like that, which in New Zealand is like supposed to be quite rare, but it's like I can still, I still know a couple people that have been hit with it. And then there's like so often you see like these like there's one particularly egregious one where it was like a bunch of young like they were like children of like lawyers and things like that from up north, did something like $50,000 or $60,000 of damage and theft or whatever over like a couple weekends, like stealing like it was like boating supplies and shit like that, and then they just get like a slap on the wrist and they don't get arrested or anything like that. It's just like, man, like it's like the like weed laws particularly, even like drug laws, the war against drugs and stuff like that, they're there to persecute minorities. In New Zealand, it's like often Maori and Pacifica. Abroad, it's like Black people, like Asian people. I just
got a copy of Joe Moam's book today, and like he quotes 19th century Irish judge James Matthew put it, in England, justice is open to all, like the Ritz Hotel. I think that's like one of the best ways I've seen it put. That's really good.
That's great.
Right. I'm going to tell you a little bit about cryptocurrency. I had a little discussion of cryptocurrency a few weeks ago on the show, and I was saying it is progressing in a certain way. And we haven't had our regular updates. I will probably put together another big update on what's been going down for next week or something like that. But for now, the US government continues investigating and prosecuting key cryptocurrency figures. I don't have a full list of sources for this, but like as I said in the previous update, like the US government has been increasingly concerned with all the obvious crimes that are happening in cryptocurrency. And there are a lot of organizations that have like had to cease trading that are like big crypto exchanges. The quick rundown is this. Several key cryptocurrency exchanges knew that they were laundering money for ISIS and let it carry on happening. So while charges have not necessarily come through for those people yet, it seems quite likely that will be something that we can report on soon. It just seems like it might happen. There have been, as I said already, obviously just tons of it is just that they don't they know that the whole thing is a huge fucking scam.
Sophie, it sounds like you hate freedom. All right, this is deregulation. I
do.
Freedom isn't free. Okay.
You have to listen to my critics for 2 minutes. I'm a terrible person. I'm a grifter. I hate freedom. I hate women.
Sometimes freedom means funding ISIS. All right, it's just. Sounds like you just don't like freedom.
But in particular, there was a story, crypto founder Do Kwon indicted in US after Montenegro arrest. He's the co-founder of Singapore-based Terraform Labs, faces 8 charges, including securities fraud and wire frauds. So this is just an example that I've picked out as the US government has begun prosecuting a bunch of people who run crypto exchanges. The other 2 main things are like I said, so many fucking scams and obviously illegal shit throughout crypto, which I'll hopefully follow up with a more detailed breakdown soon. There's a lot of because the key thing to understand here is that the government ruled that trading cryptocurrency is trading stocks, and which obviously, of course, it is. And a bunch of basically the whole crypto community has been pretending that didn't happen. And so a lot of stock trading law applies to crypto, but you can readily see places where there are accounts that tweet a string of emojis several times a day, and if there's a green emoji in there, then it's telling people that tether will go up, and if there's a red emoji it will go down. And it's firstly on the face of it, that's insider trading, but it's also the reason that they're able to accurately say that kind of stuff is because they're also using wash trading, which is basically when you are selling something but you artificially inflate the value by pretending to be a separate buyer and messing around with it that way. So there's just a lot of crime going on, and it looks like it's going to go badly for them imminently.
And that was huge with when NFTs still exist, but when NFTs were a big thing, they were doing that as well, right? inflating the value by like kind of like handing them to each other in exchange for artificially inflated amounts, so that people would look at the purchase history and then be like, wow, it last sold for like $20,000. And then you could look at like the history of that particular token, and it would be like, oh, okay, well, it was like passed between these two accounts, and
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. And it's like, oh, there's also this like transfer of like, it's gone from like $10 to 10,000, and it's like,
Yeah, exactly.
this like
I mean, it's
wallet
kind
has
of,
a history of just like sending the money back and forth between these two accounts anyways.
it's like, it's no wonder Elon Musk loves crypto so much. He probably looked at it and he was just like, holy shit, an innovative new way to do insider trading. These guys have really figured out the game here.
Yeah.
Tim, do you want to tell
Speaking
us about
of which,
France?
yeah. Speaking of which, stock market, just, wildness.
Speaking
So
of
we've
line
been,
going up.
yeah. We've been following the protests in France for like months now. Um, but yeah, just the other week, they've been protesting the retirement age going up by 2 years. They basically just ignored the gigantic public outcry. I think it was like 2/3 of the population were against it. And they just did it anyway. And so they are still protesting. They've been planning, sorry, they've been planning even bigger protests. There's one on May Day coming up, which they say is going to be the big one. That's a big one that CGT Union have been pushing. But in the meantime, they've been doing lots of other little things. So this week, between 200 and 300 demonstrators waving flags and carrying flares occupied Euronext, which is a huge stock exchange in France. And they're chanting, we are here, even if Macron does not want it, we are here. And which is a popular slogan over there at the moment. They were calling for Mr. Macron to resign, which is another popular demand from the protest.
Macron.
Yeah, so and this was like in Paris's business district, the main stock exchange and stuff, and they just filled it up with like red flare smoke. And other people around the town were setting wooden pallets on fire. There's so many different unions who are striking. Rail workers are striking. They were holding a peaceful demonstration at the Gare de Lyon railway station. And so they had referred to the day as the day of expression of railway anger, which is pretty great, the railway anger. And yeah, while up north in the city of, I think, Lille, I don't know, the protesters were walking along the railway line, blocking all the traffic, and then left peacefully. There were a bunch of unions together doing just like a general strike. Well, not a general strike, but just like more like a general railway strike sort of thing, which disrupted the trains on Thursday. And a bunch of regional lines and Paris suburban trains were affected. That was all to protest the state pension age stuff. But there's also been some other stuff kind of going on. There's a more environmentally focused protest that was happening on the same day, I'm pretty sure, where they're building a new motorway, the A69, and they're building a bunch more or whatever, but to do it, they have to cut through like a big old forest. There's like, and a bunch of environmental concerns where it's kind of like, you're gonna chop down the street for another motorway that, we don't really need. The focus should be on actually reducing traffic. Like, they say fewer cars, less tar is one of the big kind of calls for it, but they're just saying in general, like, less motorways, more kind of focus on, like public transport and all that kind of stuff, like support the rail unions and all that kind of stuff. So to protest this, a bunch of workers have been blocking off the A69 motorway by literally building a gigantic brick wall in the middle of the motorway. And it's awesome. Like, you can see there's like this huge team of workers all slapping up this wall. They got the spirit level out. They're making sure it's, it's a good quality wall. It's not going anywhere. It's amazing. yeah, so I think that's a pretty good it's a pretty good example of, like, it's like the people that would be building these roads anyway being like, no, like this is not what we want. And so yeah, so building a big wall instead. It kind of reminds me of those videos of people trolling Gmod servers and just like, building walls in the middle of roads and then harassing their the server mods or whatever like that. Except it's like the madmen did it in real life, which is extremely based.
That is a big beautiful wall. It's the most beautiful wall I've ever seen, folks.
I have to interject. Our resident builder handyman Cell in the chat says, I'll have you know it was a block wall. A block wall,
not a brick wall.
So not a brick wall.
Okay.
It
all
is.
Right then.
Absolutely correct. So that's been what's up in France. And it's wild because looking at it, there have been like a bunch of other like little kind of protests and things going on everywhere. It's just like at the moment things are all popping off over there. It's hard to keep track with the sheer volume of civil unrest, of collective action that's happening on over there. So that's very it's interesting because the government basically went directly against the will of the people, and things are just escalating. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on May Day, which is actually, I think, will be the next stream that we have. So
it'll be the day before. Well, for you, it'll be.
Oh yeah, for me, it will.
May Day,
no.
but yeah. The I guess in 2 weeks' time we'll be able to report on it. But as the stream is happening tomorrow, it'll be poised to happen.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see. But in the meantime, why don't Soph, why don't you tell me a little bit more about forensic architecture?
Sure thing. Forensic Architecture, if you didn't know, is a Goldsmiths-based research agency. They do a lot of investigating into different stuff using data and like city models. And they've been commissioned to investigate some of the cop tactics in Portland from the George Floyd uprisings in 2020. So I'm just going to read some stuff from the report, which is to do with something called Tear Gas Tuesday. Love that. So cool. Let's go. Despite being broadly banned in warfare under the terms of the 1925 Geneva Protocol, tear gas as an agent for so-called riot control has become the preferred means for police in the US and around the world to clear dissenting voices from public spaces. But the toxic chemicals contained in tear gas and other widely used chemical munitions can cause serious short-term and long-term side effects, from asthma and chemical burns to lung injury and neurodegeneration. Pretty fucked up. On 2nd of June 2020, the PPB deployed large amounts of tear gas in an attempt to force protesters to withdraw from the streets and squares of downtown Portland, unleashing a highly toxic cloud of airborne chemicals onto the same citizens it was tasked with protecting. That day would become known locally as Tear Gas Tuesday. So they've used models, and they've used some like social media data here, so that they can model basically like how the toxic chemical cloud was formed and where it spread to and where it's like likely to do the most damage, which is pretty cool for like as an approach to data science. That's pretty cool, but also just that we talked about. The word has dropped out of my brain. Social media investigating. What's the right word for this? OSINT. We talked about OSINT before, open source intelligence, before on the show, and they have a lot of this comes from people just like then basically getting people's social media videos of the police deploying tear gas, figuring out where those people were at what times, and then piecing together a map of how much tear gas was being used based on those videos. So it's a really powerful deployment of OSINT, which is really cool. Forensic Architecture worked with the Department of Mechanical Engineering at Imperial College London to analyze the PPB's use of chemical munitions that day using computer fluid dynamics, CFD, simulation. Our analysis shows how airborne chemical concentrations were in serious excess of recognized safe thresholds, raising important questions about the proportional nature of the PPB's response, their understanding of the potential harms of the chemical munitions that they use, and the risks inherent in how they use them. The findings of this investigation reinforce concerns raised and legal action taken by local activists and civil rights groups to restrict and ban the use of tear gas. Yeah, I mean, it's I think them bringing up the Geneva Protocol is pretty relevant to to get to the heart of this, like even things that are banned in warfare, right? It's okay for the cops to use that, like an excessive amount of that literally banned weapon, chemical weapon against America's own citizens, if the citizens get too out of line. It's just pretty fucked is kind of the whole story. But if people want to check that out, that's Forensic Architecture. And yeah, you should be able to find it just on Google or whatever. We might drop a link in chat too.
Hey,
that's the story.
What other imperial coronations use tear gas? Like police use tear gas against their own people? I honestly don't know. This is not a rhetorical question. I actually don't know.
I don't know whether I'm pretty sure, but I don't know for sure whether the police used it in the 2010 riots in London. I mean, it's like the militarization of American police is second to none. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was America only, but yeah.
Right. That's what I'm wondering. I wonder if it's America only. Sometimes I lose perspective on these things because I am American, and as an American, we also have this like complex where we feel like everything is in the world is America, and if not, it's bad. But I do wonder if this is just an America thing.
Fresso says, I've been tear gassed in Denmark.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Actually, that makes sense to me because when I was reading The Autonomous City History of Urban Squatting by Alexander Vasudefan, the intro thing is about squatters in Holland, I believe, who no, maybe it was in Denmark. It was in either Denmark or Holland. That's very useful. Who like were the squatters were evicted using like the counterterrorism unit. And one of the things that they point out there is like they used quick drying cement to seal all of the exits, and they just like tear gassed the whole building.
Oh my
So apparently
God.
also used in Turkey, Greece, Spain, Brazil, Venezuela, and United Kingdom as well as the States. So very cool. Around. Well, this is just like, from one small article I found. I'm sure there's more places in the world than just that. But it seems pretty popular.
Yep, everybody loves tear gas. Kira, do you want to tell us about the next story?
Sure. Should I go down to my story? Yeah. So this is a bummer of a story, but it's important that we talk about it. A Black trans woman featured in the hit Sundance documentary Kokomo City was shot and killed in Atlanta. And this was last Tuesday. Rashida Williams, also known as Coco, one of the trans women featured in the award-winning documentary Kokomo City, was shot to death in Atlanta Tuesday night. And I'm just going to read what what her GoFundMe says, because I think it's pretty well put. So this is such a tragic moment for our family. We lost a beautiful soul to a senseless murder. And to be clear, this is murder. This wasn't like an oopsie daisies. This is a murder. So we lost a beautiful soul to a senseless murder. Well known as Scooter, some of you may know her as Rashida or Coco. Coco is well known in the LGBTQ community here in Atlanta. Coco is one of Atlanta's finest and most loving transgender women. Coco had a heart of gold and spread nothing but love and light to those she came across. To know Coco is to love her. She loves her family and friends to the core of her heart. If ambitious was a person, it was Coco. She always put her best foot forward to reach all in which she desired. Coco's greatest goal was to take care of her entire family and close friends. When Coco entered the room, she always brought her beautiful, bright smile. You couldn't help but to embrace her. She cherished her loved ones, and we cherished and embraced her. She chased her dreams as an artist and entertainer. Unfortunately, Coco was shot and killed in Atlanta. Her body was found in the corner of MLK and H.E. Holmes Drive. We are in search of answers. The authorities are working close with the family. And it remains in the rest of the GoFundMe says, if you know anything pertaining to this devastating incident, don't hesitate to communicate with the family. She didn't have any life insurance, so and it's requesting funds to be able to help. I think we can probably put thank you. Yeah. Thank you for putting the GoFundMe in the chat. So in the Twitch chat and the YouTube chat is the GoFundMe link. It's sucks. It fucking sucks. It really sucks. I really don't know what else I could possibly say. Like, yet another Black trans woman murdered. It's just yet another.
I think that it's important for us to both say that like the GOP and far right project to eliminate trans people is like an escalation in towards genocide, and an attempt to like remove trans people from existence. But it's also really important to say that for Black trans women, like that's been life all along. I mean, not all along, like the entire history of the human race, but like for as long as we've all been alive, it's this is the violent, like, and on a much more like directly violent level. It's deeply horrible.
I do want to point out something in the story that I was talking about earlier, where Tortuguita, who used they them pronouns, was murdered as a force suspender. That was also in Atlanta, for the record. So a highly policed like city, murdering
certain
trans people.
Communities within that city extremely highly policed.
I don't know if Tortuguita was trans, but I wouldn't be surprised because they use they them pronouns, but you know what I mean. So this fuck the police. Please protect your trans comrades, especially our Black trans femme comrades who are extraordinarily at higher risk for being murdered just for existing.
Yeah. And anyone who tries to tell you that there isn't a project to exterminate trans people is manipulating you in an insidious way for probably their personal gain. So like
I think those stories that we covered right at the start, like the like about what was happening, where was it, in
Montana,
the Montana House of Representatives, like there's no plainer way that you can kind of like demonstrate it, right? It's like I mean there's so many ways to demonstrate it, but it's like it's not just like it's not just like people think of like, oh, like transphobe, like, like Proud Boys in the street, and that's like fascism or something like that. But it's like, no, it's like the bigger project works hand in hand with legislation and, everything like that. So,
let's not be mistaken. This is a genocide. Like I know we could talk about it a lot, but sometimes people are afraid to acknowledge the plain reality of it. There's a hotline to call in if you know someone is trans or at risk of being transed. There's trans representatives being silenced and then misgendered and then just who have the inability to even speak up on behalf of trans people. We have trans people just being murdered in the streets. Just murdered in the fucking streets. And this is not exclusive to America, but in America it's vile. I mean, don't even get me started on what's happening in Florida. We talk about this stuff a lot on stream and on the show. So it's not
and it makes sense that we do, because I think under the purview of this show, like it's a huge thing that's happening right now, and you'd have to be like out of your head to not know that it's happening. Yeah. So,
and I don't think there's a way to meaningfully engage with like modern anti-fascism without talking about, about trans people and like, the war and the ongoing war against them from the far right. Which is like, I know there's like some people that try and like kind of, like they try and downplay it or whatever, you get like people that are like, oh no, like fascism is just about this or just about that or whatever like that. But I don't think there's like any way that you can look at, like historic fascism and then, like modern kind of like, this modern wave of transphobic fascism and see like a meaningful difference, like it's the same thing.
And I mean, a lot of the people like, I don't know, who is it, Helen Joyce or whatever, who've written books in the gender critical movement here, like they're like, I'm bringing up Helen Joyce because her book as an example, like has a bunch of like, and here are these Jewish billionaires who are secretly funding the whole trans project. And it's like, if it weren't enough already that they're using all of the same rhetoric and all of the same like tricks as fascists always have, like the anti-Semitism is right there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, it's all kind of part and parcel of that.
Holy shit,
Which
Sophie's getting billionaire funded. That's amazing.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, I fucking
Yeah,
Wow.
wish.
yeah, it's wild. Even down here, we get people making accusations against, like trans people being funded by like billionaires or millionaires or whatever, and like, but like, like they'll just say that they're getting funding from like famous New Zealanders or whatever, and it's like, man, like, it's like I like, know that guy. He does not have the money. He's like he's a New Zealand celebrity. He's not like a he's not a
Yeah.
like
would I be like freaking out about having like £1,000 a month like tax bill if I was getting billionaire fund? If George Soros was paying for me to have big fat titties and a dump truck ass, like would I, would I be asking for people's donations online if that were happening? Come on, like
that's a wild thing, and I've seen people talking about this online recently as well. Like the idea that there is like this super well-funded trans lobby that is like, it's like George Soros, they're paying for this trans lobby, but then like there's so much, and there's like so many of these groups that we've talked to, or like movements that we've covered on here, where it's like it really just comes down to like a bunch of poor people, like working class people that are just doing the work themselves, and if they weren't doing it, no one else would be, like yeah, like I saw someone talking about this on Twitter I think just last night, and specifically mentioned there's a woman, I can't remember her name, Erin something, who keeps track of all the anti-trans legislation that comes out of the
Aaron
States.
Reed.
Yeah, Erin Reed, and it's like if she wasn't doing it, no one else would be doing it, and it's like she's the trans person that is just like putting in the work herself to fill this gap, and it's like there's no, and then like the transphobes get these like, they're giving each other grants, they're getting front page stories and like in all of the major kind of newspapers and stuff, and it's like, and then they're scared of this like this trans lobby. It's like,
Yeah, I'll probably say this again like a couple of times through this specific stream because we're talking about anti-fascism, but like also like you go to these demos, you look at the like Posey Parker's side of it or whatever, it's like all cameras because it's just a bunch of people who are like making content at each other in a circle, and it's like they just want to have the juiciest content. Like it's really pathetic.
There was at the Posey Park one in here, there was like a handful of people that on the fascist side that just had those like those things that like they go up with the 360 cameras all around them and just walking around. It's like, and this is like they've invested in this. This is like their thing. They're trying to capture as much content. They want to get everything. Fortunately, it's like in the case of a lot of like fascists or whatever, their footage worked against them in some cases because they were trying to spin certain things about like, oh, like the violent trans people, whatever, like that. There was one particular video which it was pretty rough. It was there was like a short video of, it's like an elderly woman who was a gender critical woman who got punched in the face, but then like through their own footage you see her earlier, like seconds before, and she's going up and she's pushing people around and all this kind of stuff, and this young person that is like obviously like very like like startled, like hits her back, like after she has already kind of like come at a bunch of people and stuff.
Bashed back, you might say. It could be an interesting phrase to explore.
Like, I mean, and it's like I'm not sure exactly how our self-defense kind of laws go, but I think like if that was in America, you would absolutely, like if she had done that thing, you could shoot her and you'd be fine. So it's like
in certain states, yeah.
Yeah. So I think
well,
it's,
I think we should probably curtail this for now and go back to it in a second because there's like more stuff to talk about with relating to like the trans demos and anti-fascism, and we'll definitely spend a while on it through the rest of the show. But for now, I'm just going to say there's one more piece of news. Comrades of the show, which we leave this section until the last, but the comrades of the show, Just Stop Oil. If you remember, we had one of the founders of Just Stop Oil on the show a few weeks ago, crashes a world snooker championship, jumping on the table and covering it in orange powder paint. Margaret Reed, 52, and Eddie Whittingham, 25, were arrested for this. So this is interesting for a few reasons. Firstly, like you see a bunch of right wingers being like they're dangerous terrorists, which is like they interrupted a sports game, and then I mean if you consider snooker sports,
I don't know what that word means, by the way. That doesn't exist in
It's
America.
like pool.
Okay,
It's pool.
Pool or billiards or whatever they say.
Yeah. Tim thinks America is like 19th century Britain.
Oh, it's like a weird thing. Everyone says pool over here, but then if you go up north and like the North Island and stuff, it's all like, you know,
They
they
say
say billiards or whatever
That's
like
wild.
that. And
That's
it's like,
wild.
so I don't know, like who says billiards?
I'm receiving information from our George Soros agents right now that are telling me the match was delayed by 40 whole minutes. Clearly, this is terrorism.
But I was going to say, like, 9/11, as far as I'm
I love how the
them,
people
like,
in the
really
photo
dangerous.
are just standing around like,
Yeah, like they're just like, okay, well, we'll wait for this to get dealt with because they know it's going to get dealt with. Like, but yeah, there are people calling them so dangerous hard. Or whatever, and like the this like powder paint is stuff that you use at like, you know, Holy Festival or whatever. It's stuff that's like literally sold for children to use. Like, it's not dangerous in any way. They didn't like attack anyone. They just jumped up on the table and like told everyone, hey, the planet's dying. We should stop that. Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. I saw an interview with some Just Stop Oil representatives following on from this, basically saying that like they'd gotten a lot of flack in the media for previous demonstrations that had like interrupted people's like commutes or people like traveling around, like blocking roads and stuff. And this had like evoked pretty angry reactions from people who are just trying to like get where they're trying to go. And like often those people are, you know, driving a fucking four-wheeler and you know, if you look in, it turns out that they run like a jet ski business or some shit, right? But like nonetheless, the image of like them trying to interrupt the general public and the general public being fairly reasonably annoyed at them, right? Wasn't a strategy they felt was working. So they've kind of switched up to disrupting things like that, you know, where power is held. So this is part of that strategy, particularly focused on the media right now, and crashing live events so that they can like get on TV and directly tell people live, we got to do something about this.
Yeah, and the head of like I don't know, some world snooker thing or whatever, some dude, Barry, old mate Barry, is like, he's like trying to get people to like basically trying to start a lawsuit against a guy in particular, where it's like they're trying to get all the people, like all of the athletes and all of that kind of stuff, just to get together and all collectively sue this one guy. But so a lot of people are in on it, but then there have actually been a couple of people that, you know, like professional snooker players that were there that have just been like, actually no, I think, you know, it's fine. I think, like, you know, I totally agree with them, and it's like, it's, you know, like whatever, you know. So yeah, which I think is like interesting because
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway,
so cool, yeah. Today's show, shall I I'll intro it. We don't have a guest this week. It's just gonna be a discussion episode. But so self-described theocratic fascist Matt Walsh was premiering his film What is a Woman? I forget where exactly, but anti-fascist activists crashed the event, forcing people to leave through only one entrance by spilling marbles all over the floor so people couldn't run away through any of the other exits. And then that one entrance that they'd forced people through had like a gauntlet of activists shaming them for supporting the trans genocide that in my original draft of this intro, I was going to explain more, but I realized we've kind of covered it in adequate detail already. Pretty based, right? And yet the majority of the reporting on this is right-wingers losing their whole shit. And you don't see not people reporting on how this is a defense against the trans genocide that's going on. So I want to talk today. I want us all to talk today about anti-fascism, but specifically, I'd like for us to have a discussion that balances between the practice of anti-fascism that has come to be known as Antifa, and the things that everyone can do to stop fascism in whatever position they hold in society. Because if the media were reporting on this in a positive light, a lot of people would very naturally agree with what the media were saying. And not because, you know, the media brainwashes us all, but because well, as we discussed earlier, they have to write headlines that are like, police form a line between rival sides of the trans debate demos, you know. Yeah. So
and I think like for a lot of people, Yeah, especially older people, they probably think that like anti-fascism is kind of like this like historical kind of like relic thing. Like they probably don't even like there's like a lot of people out there that wouldn't like they wouldn't realize that it's like a thing that, is done or as people don't, because if you were to like listen to the media or watch, the newspaper, whatever like that, you just see like, okay, these like Antifa anarchists are just like, you know, doing like
Yeah,
torching buildings for no good
yeah.
reason.
They just want to
They
smash
just
stuff
love
up.
chaos because
Yeah,
they're anarchists, and that's what anarchy means, by the way. When you
yeah, of
just
course. Chaos and
love
burning
chaos,
things.
it's just really
Yeah.
fun for you.
As an anarchist, that
Um,
is my favorite thing. Yeah.
yeah. Just the just love disarray. Just like
I see
no cooperation with anyone. Just
if I see
destroying.
a if I see a dumpster that's just full of like human excrement and like brand new PS5s and it's just been set on fire, I say this is the future that I want.
This
This is
is
what I've been
anarchy.
Mhm.
advocating
Yeah,
for.
yeah,
This is anarchy
mm,
right here.
Sometimes
yeah.
I open up a bottle of or a box of cereal and I just like pour it onto my kitchen floor.
Yeah,
I
Yeah,
love that's anarchy to me, and I love that.
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And then who has to clean that up? You, the working class of your own kitchen. And it's like
Mm.
it's crazy what Antifa did to your kitchen there. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I mean,
So
yeah, like obviously, like, so the average Joe might not, like they might not understand, like they might not see, like the kind of rise of nationalism and far right populism that is, it's happening. It's been happening for a while. It's kind of, there is like this arc of fascism where it moves through, well, generally moves through certain phases and stuff, and through anti-fascist research study and publications and stuff we can learn from that, and we can look at it and be like, oh, okay, well, like this is where we're at now, and this is where they're trying to take us. And and so that's why all forms of anti-fascism stuff are important to learn about, because there's a lot of historic and contemporary anti-fascist movements that we can learn a lot from, and
yeah.
Mhm.
that's
But
that's
maybe
why
let's talk about like anti-fascist demos as they're currently done today as kind of a starting point, right? So I think that some people are inclined to think that Antifa is an organization, and I'm saying it like that for a reason, right? Is this radical terrorist organization that people like get radicalized online and then they go and join it. It's like a domestic version of ISIS. Only what they want is for everyone to be transsexual and take drugs. And then you form like an intimidating mob of black bloc, and you go and intimidate all of the white parents and the small business owners. Um, but even besides the exaggeration, right? Like there's a crucial thing to understand, which is that like Antifa is not an organization in the way that when we talk about CGT or even Just Stop Oil, like these are organizations where like people hold regular roles in it and they have meetings. Whereas anti-fascist assembly is called they're even called anti-fascist assemblies because it's the act of assembling together is their primary existence. It's people who live local to an area being alerted to fascists trying to organize, trying to hold rallies or whatever, and then getting together to say no. As for being intimidating, it's like pretty understandable why they're doing that because fascists are bullies and bullies are also cowards. So the thing about fascists is if you outnumber them and keep on outnumbering them and keep on like doing so in a way that they understand is intimidating, they will fuck off. And that's
yeah,
a
yeah.
good thing
And
because we
there's
don't want fascists around.
like I mean, so we'll probably talk a little bit more about like the idea of like the black bloc later, but it's kind of like the there's I guess there is like that kind of strength in having a unified presence, like all looking the same. There's there's kind of like operational reasons why doing that stuff is a good idea, but I think that like lends credence to people like kind of thinking like this is a big organized thing. They have like a uniform, where it's like no, it's not like a uniform. It's just like a common way of dressing, and and we'll probably talk about that exactly why a little bit later.
But also, like, a lot of the biggest anti-fascist actions in history, like the biggest counter demos by like local anti-fascists, haven't been in Black Book. They've been people who have, like, the Battle of Cable Street is an anti-fascist date in London history. Basically, the like largely Jewish community and then like allies to the community came out in response to Oswald Mosley and the British Union of fascists trying to hold a march through East London, and it became a huge street battle. People were like throwing bricks and shit, and good, because fuck Oswald Mosley, what a fucking loser.
If we if we're gonna go through like a kind of history of like anti-fascism or whatever, like that name is gonna come up a couple times, I'm sure.
Oswald Mosley,
he was Mosley was kind of persistent.
A real fucking dweeb. Like directly inspired by the Nazis, just saw what the original Nazis were doing, was like, that's cool, we should have more of that. And then he and his buddies, all dressed in the finest M&S menswear range, like a bunch of fucking dorks, because fascists always look like a bunch of fucking dorks. So they're all there in their black turtlenecks and shit, because they decided to be the black shirts in parallel with the Nazi brown shirts. But the thing about Oswald Mosley is that it's well remembered that everywhere he went, local communities showed up to tell him to get fucked. In Liverpool, when he tried to speak there, his crowd was massively outnumbered in the thousands, and like someone fucking threw I think it was a rock, not a brick. I don't know. Someone threw something very hard and hit him in the head, which was pretty good stuff.
Maybe we should start by talking about some historical examples, because then we can just go from Mosley straight into like some of the groups that kind of like opposed to fight back. Because like obviously there was just regular folks that were getting together and stuff, but like there's like Antifa as like the concept, but then there have also been like organized anti-fascist groups that I guess before the concept of Antifa as like a blanket term or whatever like that. So Mosley and his British Union of Fascists, these are guys that were like Nazi sympathizers before the end of the war, and then after the war they kind of came back to England, and there was like, in England at the time, there was a lot of kind of like disenfranchised people and shit that were like, okay, well, we don't feel any better off or whatever. So guys like Mosley were kind of taking advantage of that to kind of build these fascist movements or whatever. But one of the kind of most well-known groups that organized around that time, formed in the mid-40s, was who people probably know. Like, this is probably one of the most famous groups, and I'm not sure if they're the origin of like the term deplatforming, or if it's just like the famous example was the 43 group that were formed in England, set up by a bunch of Jewish ex-servicemen. So they got back from the war, they got home from fighting the Nazis, and they get home and there's like a bunch of homegrown Nazis saying they're gonna wipe out Jewish people living in England and kick them out. And they were Mosley and his crew were like basically staging like violent attacks on Jewish people just living their lives. They were holding public rallies, so doing all kinds of stuff, the kind of shit that people are doing with trans people right now, and they were trying to have these public debates, and then when they were getting kicked out of public, they were hiding private debates, so people were it wasn't really debates though, right? So the 43 group got together. There's a bunch of them, a bunch of really well-known soldiers that won a bunch of medals or whatever like that. And famously also the 17-year-old Vidal Sassoon, the hairdresser, who, went on to, be the Vidal Sassoon guy, I guess.
Yeah. I saw a Sassoon salon the other day, yeah.
Yeah, still famous. Did also go on to be to join the IDF and fight in the Arab-Israeli war. So There's always
well.
there's always a but. But the 43 group, they started because there was a place, there was like a Jewish community center called Maccabee House in London, and the first meeting, there was 43 of them, and so they were like, all right, we're the 43. And so yeah, kind of this like Inglorious Bastards kind of like collection of, like soldiers and all that. And yeah, so they expanded super quick. They ended up getting a couple hundred, within the first couple meetings, and not all strictly Jewish people, whatever. Obviously, the initial group was all, almost exclusively Jewish, but then they kind of like, started picking up a lot of other people that came back from the war, and they were just like, we didn't go over there to do that, to come back for this sort of thing. Yeah, and a lot of communists as well, like, oh yeah, huge amounts of communists and all of that good stuff. And a lot of, in fact, that was like,
all right, I was just getting some water, but I wanted to comment on British Brain for a second. I was on the tube the other day, because what you just read out, right, is a like the most perfect, clear and righteous example of like, we did not fight over there so that this would happen, right? Literally, they were fighting fascists who want to kill Jews. They come home, there are fascists who want to kill Jews. They're like, no, we didn't fight over there. So I was on the tube the other day, and this old woman was talking to her husband, and she was complaining about people who had kind of dressed slutty, like they'd seen someone who was like showing a lot of skin. And she said to her husband, like, what did we even fight World War II for? And I'm just like, yeah, because Hitler famously like wanted everyone to be as slutty as possible. That was his number one policy. Like, why did we even fight against the Nazi sluts?
Well, I think it's like the things, because we definitely hear that over here as well, and it's like the idea of like the British way of life or the New Zealand way of life, and it's like we went over there to fight to preserve our way of life, and it's kind of like, well, like, I hate to break it to you, but that's absolutely not what like any of these wars have been about. Like, it's just, like the romanticization or whatever like that, the idea of, like we fought for our freedoms. It's like, no, you absolutely no, you didn't, your granddad didn't, whatever. Anyway, so they published like a little newspaper and everything, and they were collecting like info from, like basically the same as like modern anti-fascist groups do, except like these days we have social media and stuff like that. But they were like publishing these things in a local little newspaper that they were putting out, being like, this is who this guy is. He's fucked. Like, he's not welcome in our neighborhood or whatever. Things like that, which is like, and they also tied it into like kind of global movements, being like, this is what, the fascists are doing over there, and this is why, people shouldn't allow it, this kind of stuff. And they even, like, this is like back in the 40s and stuff like that, and they were like reporting on like what was happening in South Africa, like in apartheid and all that kind of shit. So, which is like, like pretty based, especially for the time, like, yeah.
That's fucking rad.
And this is like a world without the internet, so it's like, to even like be finding out all this information and stuff like that is just, so wild. And so and it's kind of, yeah, but one thing that is like really like a recurring thing with organized anti-fascist groups is that they actually did get a lot of pushback from like the kind of like center left or mainstream left and everything like that. There's like a lot of people that like considered them to be too radical, too extreme, like even people calling them terrorists and like saying like this is guerrilla warfare or anything like, and things like that. But it's like, the thing is, like, mostly in that they were already out there picking the fights, they were already out there attacking Jewish people, so this was like community defense, right?
Yeah. And like, if you accept that, and you should accept that, like, the state is not going to intervene to stop the fascists in a meaningful way, like, that there's no other defense against them, right? It's like, then debating stuff in parliament or like lobbying a local MP or whatever is not going to stop them. Like, if they were faced with like, the state against them, then like they would back down immediately, because again, fascists are cowards. But like, they're not going to be, right? And it's like, it doesn't, I hope that this doesn't need explaining. I put my first note in the show notes today as just like, Antifa is based, it's based to be Antifa. None of this will be a discussion about whether it's okay to be Antifa. If anyone in the chat should be a low bar, but anyone in the chat who wants to have that discussion can have that discussion somewhere else, or preferably not at all.
Yeah. So yeah, but some of the things that they were doing were the 43 were, so they would aside from just, you know, like confronting the black shirts when they saw them in public and stuff, they would try to disrupt as many of Oswald Mosley's speeches as possible, because he would you know, get up, you know, like the classic kind of speaker's corner thing where he'd get up and like talk to a crowd just in a public space, you know. So they'd set up at little like markets and things like that. And yeah, and one thing that they would do is they would set up a platform and he would stand on it and he'd do his thing or whatever like that. And like, so one really famous case was where they saw him talking and a bunch of the 43 guys were there and they just thought, okay, cool, let's sneak around. They snuck around to the side of the stage and each kind of like took a corner and just literally just deplatformed them and just like flipped them over onto the ground and then just kind of dispersed among the crowd or whatever, which was like a really famous moment. But yeah, so
you see Milo Yiannopoulos or whatever today complaining about deplatforming, and it's like, my guy, you're lucky that people like just talked to the venue owners and told them to stop, like to not let you in. Like deplatforming used to mean shoving you off a platform. Like,
yeah. So, you know, like they were doing things like that. They were, you know, like pelting him with things or whatever, and just like making him and his boys feel unsafe, you know, to do the thing, which is, you know, it's based to make fascists feel unsafe.
Fascists
so what they
feel unsafe. Yeah.
They started doing private meetings, and so they would do these, you know, like these meetings where they would be like, okay, we're going to meet up at this, you know, hall or whatever like that, meet us there. And then so they just started, the 43 would just go there as well, you know, and at this point they had hundreds of members, so they would be like outnumbering all of the fascists, and like, you know, even if they didn't get let in, they would wait outside and, you know, like kind of, you know, tell them what's up,
have a polite word or two. Yeah.
They started doing ticketed events, you know, and they were you know, so you would only get one if you were like, you know, a legit fascist or whatever. It was a private event, you know. So but because they had people that were kind of like, you know, like moles inside the organization, they were able to get copies of the tickets, which they then mass produced. So they would just show up to the events, and, you know, they'd expect like, oh, you know, there's going to be like 50 to 100 fascists or whatever, and then, you know, all these people would show it, and then after a while they'd be like, wait a minute, we didn't have this many tickets, and before they know it, like literally everyone there is like an anti-fascist. And, you know, and this was causing problems because they would be turning away people that would be showing up that would be actually fascists, but, you know, because the, you know, like the hall was already full because all the anti-fascists got there early. So you know, they just made it like impossible for them to organize. And you know, and this is, once again, this is before the internet, so they didn't have message boards to like share their ideas or anything like that. They had to have these meetings. So doing this was like legitimately just stopping them from organizing and disrupting the whole thing. Yeah, so this carried on. Mosley was eventually kind of, I guess, like his ability to organize and, you know, rally support was temporarily just completely taken away from him. So he so when he faded away for a little bit, the group eventually just kind of like voluntarily just shut up shop. I think in the 50s they were just like, okay, cool, like, you know, this threat has passed for now, so we'll just kind of you know, like we're all going to go our separate ways. And then they disbanded. There's like, I think there's a couple of like monuments to them around, like at you know, like
oh, cool,
kind of well-known Jewish spots.
I didn't know that. I'll have to go seek those out. That's really cool.
Yeah. I think it's like there's like some historical society that has kind of like set up a couple of things. But yeah, and but then a little while later, there was so Mosley and a bunch of others did end up kind of making a little bit of resurgence, you know, and there's like it was kind of like an ongoing thing. But and then much later, a couple of decades later, another group actually kind of stepped up, the 62 group, inspired by the 43, but actually named because they formed in 1962.
I was gonna say like cooler. They've got more guys to begin with, but no,
yeah.
a shame.
So, but this one was like, it was, like it was a Jewish group. It was strictly Jewish group, but they did work with other immigrant groups and everything like that. But it was they said it was like really important for them just to stay as like a Jewish kind of run group. And they were, another group where they were like actually kind of doing direct action against fascist groups, because there were a whole bunch of groups in London at the time that were basically organizing against immigrants and Jews. So they were just like, look, okay, we need to organize, and it's important for us as Jews who have historically, we've been through all this kind of stuff like that, so we need to have like an organized Jewish resistance force.
It's worth saying, like in America they had the swinging 60s. In the UK we had like der Sturming 60s. Like fascists popped off over here.
Yeah. It's wild. It's like there was part of what the 62 did was they actually exposed kind of like a conspiracy of like actual connections between the far right and legitimate like actual Nazis. Like this was in the 60s, but Nazis that had kind of like survived the war. And and like they even like there was some undercover 62 group members were going to meetings by a group in Brighton called the Northern League that actually had like legitimate surviving SS officers meeting there with the local kind of neo-Nazis. So they went on for years doing the typical kind of direct action anti-fascist stuff, eventually wrapping it up sometime in the 70s. But like both kind of the same kind of vein, and like definitely like the 62 group was kind of founded to pick up the mantle of the 43. Super interesting, because I find that I think that there is like there's such a tradition of in particular Jewish anti-fascism that I think it's like there's this kind of from people that went through the Holocaust and stuff like that, there's like a kind of like almost like a split where there's like like the Jews that are like very like like the Hasidic Jews and stuff like that are very like opposed to like violence in a lot of cases and stuff, and they're just like, no, like we do, like we carry on our very well, it's like they've actually created new traditions of like non-violence and things, basically to be like, we are like God's chosen people, and we have to do this, we have to we have to go this way, we have to stay true to our kind of like our faith and all this kind of stuff. And then there's like this other side that are like okay, well as Jews the most important thing for us is to stop the the murder of other Jews and stuff. I mean, that's the most important to like both of them and stuff like that, but they're like, but instead of kind of like trying to cloister ourselves away into this community, they're like, no, we need to actually get back and we need to fight back directly, like direct action. And I would say like a lot of groups shy away from like violence and direct action and stuff like that, but it's kind of like in a lot of the stuff that I've read by people that were associated with these groups at the time, they were like, there is no violence we could commit that would not be kind of that would not be kind of justified self-defense to what we have been through,
which ties back to what I wanted to bring this back around, like the idea of bashing back. Like if fascists make it clear that what their ultimate project is to like completely wipe you out and have you exterminated as a people, stop you living your lives, and like make it just impossible for you to exist, like, well, it's at first, like the initial point is like anti-fascists have always organized under like, you know, bashing back. It's always a retaliatory thing against like fascists want to wipe out this group of people. We're gonna bash them back. Which is I keep on bringing this phrase up just because like one of the most common things today about Antifa being so scary, radical terrorist org or whatever, is that they're intimidating and violent, and it's like only towards people who are trying to intimidate and be violent towards minorities. You know, it's yeah. I also wanted to say what you're saying about like um certain Jewish traditions being like peaceful and nonviolent. There was a couple of episodes of, or 3 episodes of Cool People Who Did Cool Stuff by Magpie Killjoy, where they talked about Sholem Schwarzbard, which his name literally translates as Blackbeard. The episodes are called Sholem Schwarzbard, the Jewish assassin who ruled. Basically, like like his story is pretty interesting, and like he basically like killed a lot of anti-Semites, and there was a really interesting part of that where like people who were religiously nonviolent, even as they were being like attacked, like literally directly attacked. Yeah, it's like they like, even though they were being directly violently attacked, there were people who are saying, no, we'll just pray and hope that this we pass through this. We're not going to fight them. But crucially, like Sholem Schwarzbard was like alongside those people, and when he was like, that's cool, but I'm gonna kill them, they were like, they were like, okay, we will pray for you also.
Like, totally. There's a TV show called Hunters. I'm not sure if anyone's seen it. It's like a Robert De Niro one, set in like, I think it's like, like the 70s or whatever, and it's like kind of emulating that kind of like grindhouse exploitation style sort of thing, but it is about Operation Paperclip. It's about it's about how America resettled a bunch of Nazis into America, gave them a bunch of really great jobs, so they got involved with NASA and politics and all this kind of stuff. It's obviously like it's very,
well, we have to reach across the
overblown.
aisle. We can't just dehumanize
exactly.
people. We can't just be like, Nazis deserve.
I mean, and these are probably the guys that were hanging out with the Northern League in Brighton. But this show, it's like, it's like obviously like hyper violent and very like, there's like, it's basically this group that are just uncovering this conspiracy that the government, like the government said they didn't do these things. They said that all the Nazis were gone, but they secretly kind of resettled them, and they're finding all these Nazis and they're hunting them down. It's a good group led by some kind of Holocaust survivors that are hunting down these Jews in America, and then uncover this big conspiracy. But there's like this one line when this young kind of like idealist Jewish kid, the main character, he says to Robert De Niro's character, he's like, this is what he says, like, this isn't revenge, this is murder, because this kid didn't live through the Holocaust. And De Niro's character says, he's like, this is not murder, this is mitzvah. It's like, fuck, that's based.
That's so fucking cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised there honestly isn't more media about not like Nazi hunters, because I find that to be, in the same way as like cowboys were only really a thing, like Wild West shoot 'em up cowboys were only really a thing for about 10 years or so. Like there's a little period of history where people were like hunting down Nazis, and there are like interesting tensions to play with if you're like telling a story, because like some of these people were like from Israel, and like famously like Eichmann stood trial in Israel, right? And like some of the Nazi hunters were trying to take people to Israel to face trial. Some people were not, like, would refuse to like work with Israeli authorities in that way because they were against what Israel was doing to Palestinians. Like it's there's a lot to play with there. It's kind of interesting, like, again, to kind of draw the cowboy analogy, like you got your guy who's like, no, he's not going to stand trial, definitely some Nazi hunters who are like that,
like the Inglorious Bastards kind of thing, where it's like, oh yeah, cool, like like right at the end where they're like, well, they're going to take you and they're going to reintegrate you, and without that uniform nobody's ever going to know that you're a Nazi.
Exactly,
so we're going to give them a way that everybody's going to know you're a Nazi.
Exactly.
So swastika on his forehead. But totally. And I think it's like like a lot of people will make out that like kind of that, I guess, like that kind of anti-fascism is like it counteracts, like other leftist positions, like, like prison abolition and stuff. It's like, how can you agree with prison abolition when, like there's, like if you believe everyone can be recuperated, what do you, like, why are you
I don't believe fascists can be recuperated is my
yeah, but it's
like I don't know.
like
That's
I think
my
there's
answer to
like
that mainly.
you have to take into, I think you have to take the idea of like community harm and like the, into the question sort of thing like that, where it's kind of like this person, an SS officer or, like a group of SS officers allowed to organize and stuff is like a far greater danger, so
Yeah, like even
yeah,
if you believe whichever Nazi can be like rehabilitated, it's like to quote a great socialist theorist, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few for the one. And like fucking Nazis being allowed to carry on being Nazis is against the needs of like all of humanity.
There's probably some like one thing that I really liked about the this is getting very nerdy now, but the remake of the Wolfenstein series, the New Order, New Colossus, and Youngblood, there's some like really amazing and like also quite nuanced views in that. You play as these like anti-fascist group that all come from different backgrounds from like all over the place and stuff, and you do get these like different perspectives and stuff. There's like some really there's some really amazing conversations in that where it's like they've kind of recreated the main character BJ Blazkowicz, I think his name is.
Yeah.
He's this he's like this he's the child of a Polish Jew and an American, and he's kind of like in those games reframed as this kind of like really contemplative warrior poet.
Yeah, I love it. I really adore those games. Yeah,
they're really great. There's some like there are some actually really good videos on YouTube as well talking about his like kind of Jewish identity.
Totally. Yeah, Jacob Geller's one is really, really good.
Yeah, it's really good. But yeah, the writing in it is really fantastic, and there's like a lot of good statements about like fighting like fascism and the far right, and like not letting them live to to organize and stuff. But yeah, everyone should check them out. They're really great. Lots of great characters, despite being like really over the top and like obviously like far in like the genre kind of thing, like just really also really grounded and real, kind of like I guess like real life, the history of actual anti-fascist groups and stuff.
Yeah, another piece of media for people to check out, and this contributes to our like history of anti-fascist organizing as well, is Chasseurs de Skins, which is a documentary that was made about this group, the skinhead hunters, right? Chasseurs de Skins in France. Basically, like in the punk scene, there was this awareness like we need to be as offensive as possible to everybody. And like what's really offensive to our parents who like fought in the war, well, like the swastika is really offensive to them. But all of that is like a roundabout justification for people who aren't really punks and are just actually fascists to explain why they're wearing a swastika all of a sudden.
Yeah,
right?
and it gives them like plausible deniability and everything as well. It's like, oh, I'm just being edgy. It's
the anti-Semite is free to play with words and so on and so on. Yeah, and then this group formed who basically were like, no, we're not going to have Nazis around. That's not okay. Fuck that. And what's amazing about like then they're often translated as the skinhead hunters, but like their name's literally like the skin hunters. And what's kind of like really fucking cool about what they did was like they didn't start off having like boots or jackets or whatever, and their means of getting them was for new members of the gang to like just go beat up a skinhead and take their jacket and boots off them. Like if you need boots for like fighting Nazis, beat up Nazis first and then take their boots. It's good fucking shit.
Yeah. I love that idea of a aesthetic defined by their direct action, which is to chase them down. Some other really interesting like historic movements as well would be in Germany, the Red Front Fighters League, I can't remember the German name, but it's like the acronym is actually like it's like RFB or something like that, like probably Red Front Fighters Bund or something. So they were an anti-fascist paramilitary organization in Germany during the 1920s and 30s. So yeah, they were heavily affiliated and largely run by the Communist Party of Germany, who were fighting back because, you know, as we know, part of the Nazis' kind of first wave of attacks was against communists and trade unionists and stuff.
It should be remembered that like much of the Nazi administration, Hitler himself even, like kind of got their street cred to begin with by just having their ass kicked by communists over and over again. Because there was this period, like the comparison's been made before, that like if you know, if Portland today were Germany in the 20s, you know, it wouldn't be like dudes who like have got an open carry license and kind of posture around with their rifle, and some other dudes with like homemade riot shields kind of bumping into each other, because like in the 20s there were all these people who had just fought in World War One, and they didn't see any issue with kind of bringing that straight back to defending their political beliefs at home. And so there was this huge period of like street battles between Nazis and communists. And it's, I mean, I think a big part to understand is that like in Germany, there was institutional capture. So the far right increasingly had like the police, the courts, the entire judicial system like on their side. And despite the fact that the communists basically kicked their shit in every time for like 10 years, that's how they still managed to gain power.
Yeah. It's it's interesting as well. Like sorry, I was just distracted by the communism versus things. But yeah, so the RFB, I just looked up the Rote Frontkampfverbund. So they were so their symbol was like a little red fist and a little yellow circle with the name around it, or sometimes it would also have the German saying "Schützend den Front, aber den Fiend," which is a really bad pronunciation for protecting the friend, fighting off the enemy. And they used to, one of their sayings was they would say "Red Front" or "Rot Front" as like a greeting to friends. But
my Antifa like code sign is to say hey, smoke weed every day, the FBI killed MLK. But like, I mean, it changes over time is the thing, so you have to stay up to date.
Exactly. As they keep killing more, you know, people of note. So they were fighting back against the Nazis as they were forming and as they were organizing and all this kind of stuff. Like they knew, you know, like that it was like kind of the communist imperative to fight back against fascism. And and they were forming little local groups around the place, which is like another kind of thing that you often see with anti-fascist organization, even when it is an organized group, that it is kind of like a decentralized structure, you know, like which is like, I mean, in any kind of paramilitary group, that is always kind of like part of the deal, you know. And like we've talked about this before about how you even see this across, like, you know, like you see this in The Sopranos, you know, like that's a really good way to organize en masse across wide areas, while also kind of protecting yourself and others. So they were really good, but like the wild thing is that like they were fighting against the Nazis as they were forming, but they were also fighting the police, because even before the Nazis kind of like took control or whatever like that, the police were entirely on that side, sort of thing. So for like years and years, they were considered like, you know, like an enemy of the state or whatever, which is like pretty wild.
And that's why that's exactly why I want to have this discussion of like, there are things everyone can do, like there are things everyone can do, and there are things anyone can do. So anyone can go to an anti-fascist counter demo and be one of the people outnumbering the fascists, right? But everyone has things they can do. So this is why, like, you know, we reported a couple of weeks ago about like the Nebraska senator who's been just like filibustering against the bills against trans people, and she's just like not let anything at all pass through the legislative session because she won't let that go through. And it's like that is another key part of like anti-fascist praxis is you shall not pass, right? Ne passeran. Like, and I think that people, this is going to tie into the homework, is kind of why I'm spending a moment on it, right? Like, I think people think that you shall not pass or ne passeran like exclusively is for like when you are directly opposing sorry, I'm saying ne passeran because that's the film about the Scottish workers. No passeran anyway. You know, they people think that no passeran is like when you are directly stopping fascists like marching through your neighborhood or whatever, but like it is a full scale approach to anti-fascism in every walk of life. And it's like it's you know, that politician in Nebraska who's filibustering, she is engaging in no passeran right now. Like that's and I think that like it's really worth people thinking about all the ways that they can do that in whatever role they have in society, right? Like I think that sorry, you have more history stuff we should go into, or
oh yeah, I would wrap it up with these guys. Well, I was gonna say they so yeah, they were just yeah, they were fighting the police and the Nazis quite a lot during that period. But they eventually, there was like a period that they called Bloody May. It was after International Workers' Day. Well, so they were having these protests because they were banned. The Nazis banned International Workers' Day because it was like, you know, like people have forgotten about it now largely, but that was a day that had like, you know, such like, you know, they were really important day to the labor movement and stuff, and has like such a socialist history. They banned it.
It's truly like the big muscly dog, the crying little dog. Like then hey, as well as an International Women's Day, we should have an International Workers' Day where we get together and kick the shit out of Nazis. And then like the crying dog now, it's like, where's International Men's Day?
Yeah. So they banned that, and they also banned the Red Fighters at the same time as an organization, and they confiscated everything, like took all their assets, everything like that. And this is like a group that had over 100,000 members at the time, you know. So a bunch of them formed into small separate groups and stuff, but that carried on the fight. But yeah, as soon as the Nazis took over, they were literally like among the first people to be tracked down. They tracked down as many members of the RFB as they could and sent them straight into concentration camps, which is like, you know, where a lot of people talk about, you know, like first they came for the, you know, the communists, well, the trade unionists or whatever like that. A lot of that, these were the Red Fighters, some of the first victims of the Nazis. And so yeah, a lot of the original members all died in the concentration camps. But yeah, some of them actually managed to escape and ended up joining the Spanish Civil War. Speaking of no passeran, you know, because they were committed anti-fascists, so they jumped on over there. Yeah, and they kind of like, you know, like went on to do other stuff. Like
that's an interesting one because I've seen people kind of be like, was Franco technically a fascist? He was a kind of monarchist or whatever, and it's like, well, anti-fascists at the time knew what he was. Like,
yeah, anarchists and communists from here like flew over to join the fight. But yeah, kind of moving on from there, I guess.
Can I interject really quickly and just say, if anyone's wondering why I haven't spoken, I'm just absorbing all this knowledge. Sophie and Tim are very knowledgeable, and I don't know a lot of this stuff. So if you're in an audience and feeling the same way, I'm in the same boat as you. So I'm just sitting here munching on the bread that I made. I'm just eating a lot of bread and listening. So
okay. Well, I mean, it's still be very helpful for you to like ask questions if you have any questions.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. It's a good content format or whatever. What was I going to say? Oh, and Kira, you're our American in this discussion, so I should acknowledge that like some Americans also, it's in the canon that Indiana Jones went to fight in the Spanish Civil War against Franco. So, you know.
Yep, those are my people.
He also took out a few Nazis as well, you know.
Yeah, he was quite well known for that. Yeah, in fact, he hates Nazis. Yeah.
Yeah. That was, well known fact about American hero Indiana Jones.
Nazis and their magic. That's right.
I kind of wanted to say about the Nazis getting power and then like making the Red Fighters League illegal and then putting those people in concentration camps. It's like this ties into like what you'll see in fascist praxis today, that like they see no issue in like doxing, harassing, violently attacking their enemies, people who stand against them. We reported on Posey Parker getting tomato juice tipped on her, right? Like Nazis have doxed the woman who did that, right? And it's like they don't see an issue doing that because they all have like the worst kind of cop brain. Like they all have meth cop brain. And so they all think that like, you know, when I'm in charge, those people will get punished. And you can see that with the Nazis as a direct demonstration. But like the reason that they act like fucking creeps, right, is that they think they're basically tracking down criminals. And it's pretty pathetic.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like that's kind of the thing, right, where it's like you part of like the, I guess, like the recruiting and like the propaganda thing from like fascism is often to kind of like, I guess, like radicalize working class people to become kind of like the enforcers of their ideology within their community, like to literally turn them into cops,
Yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
to be, and this is like the thing that we're getting in, like in America with that the bill to like, have you seen any, trans activity or anything like that?
Exactly.
Rat on them here. It's like that's the exact same thing, like
it's like a liberal's perfect world is where everyone is a business owner. And like a communist's perfect world is where everyone is just a dude and just gets to fucking vibe. But like a fascist's perfect world is where every single person is a cop. And that's why fascism is always in crisis, is because like they always need people to knock on. They must be like jailing and executing people at all times. Which is why it has to, a fascist society is always imploding because they have to jail more people.
And I think this like also kind of like ties in a way to a lot of like the stuff that like people don't often realize is like really fascist, but like the kind of stuff that we often talk about being fascist. But like you get about this, like there's been like a viral Twitter post talking about it recently, but it's also something that guys like Jordan Peterson and also like guys like Jack Donovan and stuff have talked about a lot, where they say like as a man, it's like every confrontation you have with another person, well, every interaction you have with another man is kind of like a barely restrained fight, where it's like
right. It's always a threat of violence.
Yeah, there's like an underlying threat of violence or whatever.
Which
like
is
that.
Amazing for Jordan Peterson to say, because if that were true, then my guy wouldn't have lived past 12 years old. Like
yeah. I've tweeted at him telling him that he's the least intimidating man on Twitter.
For real.
And his like book is like full of like, talking about like how badly he wants to like just boot children across the playground,
right.
And it's just like
he's had dreams where he's like fighting journalists who disagree with him or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like this is and like actually threatened, like journalists, what he say is like, I will slap you happily, whatever. But and like this is literal like fascist brain. Like
it's amazing to hear Jordan Peterson say he would do anything happily because his voice is always so sad.
It's wild.
By the way, Jordan Peterson, friend of the show, if you're watching, keep it up.
yeah, keep going, bro.
You're doing a great job, buddy.
You're doing a great job.
No, it's like just like that kind of thinking also leads into that, like every person as a cop, every person as like, it's very similar. And I think that like a lot of people get sucked into that kind of stuff through through stuff that isn't like, I would say, overtly fascist, and then like through an inspirational quote Instagram pages, Jim Bro forums and stuff like that. But yeah, it's 100% like very much like what is the logical, like what's the next step in that line of thinking.
Should we talk about some things everyone can do and anyone can do? So you said we'd talk a little bit more about Black Bloc. So I think that like talking about things anyone can do first would be useful in talking about, like, as I said, anyone can show up to an anti-fascist counter demo. But as I also just said, like these fascists are real fucking creeps, and they've got the what was it with the drill tweet the other day, like glue huffing used car salesman brain, and they all think that like anyone who stands against fascism is like a criminal who they need to track down. So like this is why people disguise their identities when they go to anti-fascist counter demos, which is the formation of Black Bloc, right? So Black Bloc, people talk about it being like the Antifa uniform or whatever. It's not a uniform. It's very literally not uniform. When we talked before, like about Oswald Mosley, like had a very specific like dorky chinos and fucking black turtleneck thing going on.
They always go for like dorky shit, you know, like the American thing with like the polo and the little khakis and
dressing like Trump, yeah, like
and they're always wearing like little boat shoes and stuff.
I think there's a very real like kind of domination through absurdity where they're kind of dressing like embarrassing fail sons to say like this is our right to look like this, and like we it's all the, you know, their thought is kind of like it's all the scarier that we are genuinely threatening to people.
So brutal.
Yeah, you get like the other dudes, like the kind of like embracing absurdity, like dudes like the Boogaloo dudes that are wearing like the Hawaiian shirts and shit like that.
Because they're going to the big luau, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's like, you know, obviously like Proud Boys that wear like the black and yellow polo shirts, which is like, that's them emulating like the British kind of skinhead, like Fred Perry kind of look and stuff, you know? So
yeah,
it's
totally.
Yeah.
But Black Bloc is not a uniform. It is a tactical measure to stop people from identifying anti-fascists, because fascists will always try their absolute best to dox people and to figure out who people are and to harass them. And like, if you're not part of, you know, the Battle of Cable Street or whatever, like I said before, like if it's not that the anti-fascist action is just everyone from the community saying like fuck you to the fascists, and instead it is like an organized anti-fascist assembly, then people need to kind of protect their identities.
Especially like these days where, like we were talking about earlier, where there are so many people that show up to rallies, like the Posey Park one in Auckland. They just show up with like these 360-degree cameras and everything like that.
Exactly.
And I've been watching it as like all these TERFs have been combing through that footage and like just zooming in and, you know, trying to like figure out like, okay, who is this person? You know, what were their movements throughout the day? All this kind of stuff. And obviously, like, you know, like we said earlier, it sometimes works against them, where it's like, you know, they put up a little clip of something and they go like, look at this, you know, like this Antifa person doing this or whatever, and then you just like rewind the footage and 5 minutes later it's totally justified.
Exactly.
But so
and this is already, I mean, this is the thing, it's going to bounce, it's probably just going to end up bouncing back and forth. But when I'm talking about things everyone can do as well, it's going to keep on being like, there are things everyone can do that disable those fascist methods, right? Like if fascists are trying to like seek punishment for people who attend anti-fascist demos, like, you know, they might try to shame people publicly for being anti-fascist. And like, you know, for example, I'm kind of concocting an example. I do know this has happened to some people, but like trying to go to people's employers to say like, look, they're a dangerous political radical. And it's like, so one thing that everyone can do is like, if you are an employer, get wrecked. But also, you know, if you are employed somewhere, like one thing you could do is to talk to the people at your company that like, hey, if someone does approach you about any of our employees like being anti-fascist, like you should back them up, because being anti-fascist is based actually. And that's like a hard conversation to have. But, and I mean, this is probably good. Like there is a broad stroke of like hard conversations is something that everyone can do. So I'd also say like in the UK right now, the Equalities and Human Rights Commission is like increasingly talking about trying to ban trans people from the correct like bathrooms. So like there's something that you can do if you have a local place that you go to regularly in the UK. Like you can go in there and say like, hey, if this legislation gets passed, I just want to know that you're not enforcing it. Like I want to know that you are going to remain a trans-friendly space and you will like not like side with people who are trying to persecute trans people for using the right bathroom.
Yeah, absolutely. But But yeah, speaking of black bloc, like, so, the idea is usually just to wear entirely black because then it makes, there's less kind of identifiers, or whatever, and like cover your face with a black mask and all this kind of stuff. The one thing that I've seen that, well, two things that I've seen that people usually get picked up on, though, is shoes and backpacks. So if you do take a backpack with you, try to make it like, either like a cheap one that you're probably not going to, use again, if it's like like from like an op shop or just like a dollar store one or whatever like that. If it does have any identifiable logos or anything on it, try and cover them up. You can put some black tape over the top, something like that. And do the same with shoes. If you can, just wear, plain black mass-produced ones, because so many people have been busted because they were like, wearing like a particular kind of, like, like some Jordans or something like that. It's like, okay, cool. Well, all these people look the same, but this guy's got like the white and red Jordans or whatever.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah.
Track them, and then it's like, like, yeah, it's and things like that, and also like tattoos and stuff should obviously be covered up because they are a huge giveaway. A good place to get good quality like just all black stuff is often obviously you go to an op shop or something like that, but also military surplus stores are usually quite good, especially for like face coverings and things like that, because they're mass produced as well. It's also kind of like, like anyone could get a black ski mask like that.
It's also important we should mention gray bloc, which is like people will still try to protect their identities, but not necessarily be in black bloc, because black bloc is seen as on the side of anti-fascist organizing is a clear message that like we intend to intimidate, and like if shit goes down and we anticipate shit might go down, like we want to be able to protect our identities and not be identified for doing like for defending ourselves. And like gray bloc also is seeking to protect people's identities. So it still like generally has like covered faces, but and like a hat or a hood or whatever. But it's usually just people's kind of plain clothes, but like preferably clothes that you're not also posting in social media or whatever.
Yeah. And there's like that's the other thing, right? Like a lot of the time people will be like, oh, okay, well, we found this guy wearing this like black jacket and he's also wearing this on his Instagram and this page or whatever like that.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of stuff like that. And it's kind of like it's the same mentality as you see a lot of so if you were to see low-level drug dealers on the side of the street and they all wearing the same clothes and they all have like very similar haircuts and stuff, it's because like so say it's like a black kid with braids or whatever like that, and someone gets an eyewitness or whatever like that, and they go to the cops and go like, oh, it's a young black kid with braids, and they go, well, there's like 1,000 young black dudes with braids in the city or whatever. So you then like for the gray bloc or whatever like that, it's like you don't necessarily need to be wearing all blacked out or whatever like that. But if you're just wearing super common stuff that everyone wears and things like that, it's like, oh, like, okay, that guy's got like, like you kind of have to like, I guess, tailor it to where you're at and
there's also
people are wearing and stuff. So
yeah, there's also an important distinction to make with influencers as well, which is that like if I'm, for example, attending something and there is a kind of dress code, like I will go in the dress code because like I'm not I don't want to encourage anyone to break that and like expose their own identities. But also like as someone with my face all over the internet and like I'm quite recognizable, like I know that people will know who I am. And I know that fascists will very quickly pick out that I am me. And like that's something I know going in. It doesn't mean that I won't like dress how everyone else is dressing and stick to the same tactics, because like I say, if I showed up and I was just like, hey, it's me, Sophie from Mars, then other people who are present on my side would be like, well, Sophie's not worried about it, we don't have to worry about it either.
Yeah. And there's also like one thing that you do have to be careful of is like wearing anything, and sometimes even black bloc is considered this, but like anything that could be considered like you like this is just in case you get like arrested or something like that, that it is an indication of intent. Like you know, like I have seen people at protests before that have like shown up with like, you know, like kind of makeshift body armor and things like that, which I feel like if it's a thing that's ongoing, like say if this is like, you know, day 4 of the George Floyd protests or whatever like that, and there's literally like skirmishes happening in the street and stuff like that, it's not such a big deal. But if you're like showing up to like, you know, day 1 of you know, a protest that is, you know, like supposed to be like a peaceful protest or whatever like that, and you've got like shit strapped to your forearms and things like that.
But you've brought your homemade riot shield and like,
yeah, like
you know,
that's
yeah,
not just going to make you a target for like, you know, arrest on the day, but down the line. And, you know, like people, like all the, you know, the fascists and stuff like that, they'll be like looking at you and they'll be like, look, this person came to fight, and they'll probably try, you know, like that's definitely, you're definitely going to have them try their best to track you down and do all that kind of shit like that, try and ruin your life or whatever.
Right,
so
exactly.
yeah, so that's something to be very aware of. You kind of have to exercise a little bit of you know, restraint and that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I think aside from like, you know, black bloc and actually getting out direct action and stuff for things that the average person can do, yeah, I think like probably like, I mean, this goes with like basically everything we ever talk about on this show, but educating yourself is a really important thing. There have been like extensive studies on the rise of fascism and anti-fascism and things like that, which I think important to learn about. Like, I mean, you don't have to, like, I know people that are like at university like seriously studying like fascism and anti-fascism and all this kind of stuff, and you don't need to go like that hard. Generally those people do a lot of the work that us kind of like downstream of them can like pick up on. But yeah, there can be a lot of stuff that can help you kind of like identify like kind of burgeoning fascist movements or like effectively combat them.
Yeah, I mean, you just said people who are kind of studying at like an academic level, but it is actually very easy to find anti-fascist social media networks for any place that you live in, where people are very happily sharing like their anti-fascist research, and crucially also just like demo information, right? Like if I can't guarantee, you know, your city anti-fascist assembly will necessarily work, but like something like that will very quickly, I mean, chat, I'm genuinely like, give this a go. Like if you have Twitter, like you can probably find a Twitter account for where you live that is doing anti-fascist research and alerting people to when there are fascist organized like fascist rallies in your area.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, aside from like, you know, like the really heavy duty kind of like learning about fascism stuff, there is actually like a lot of like really kind of like light stuff that you can do. I think one that often gets recommended is the, what is it called, there's an essay, Fascism, from Umberto Eco, who you may know from writing The Name of the Rose, a really amazing and well-known book. But yeah, he actually grew up as a child. He grew up in fascist Italy under Mussolini, and so years later, like I think it was like in the 80s or 90s, he wrote this essay called Fascism, and he includes in it like 14 kind of I guess like common traits of fascism. And it's you know, it talks about like the cult of tradition, that disagreement is treason, pacifism is trafficking with the enemy. Like there's a whole bunch of them, you know, and it's like when you can read through it and you can see how it applies to, you know, different movements and stuff. And it's like it's easy to look at kind of existing movements that have already gathered momentum and be like, oh yeah, sweet, like they tick all the boxes, you know. Like I don't know if that is like particularly helpful. Like a lot of people will always be like, well, you know, these guys are technically fascist or whatever, but usually by the time they're doing that, it's like we already know, like, but I think it can be good for when you see new things rising, like, like you might see, like, you might see a particular political figure or whatever giving a speech and talking about, like, how the enemy is both, they're like weak, they're like, like,
Yeah, they're weak because they're degenerate and wrong, but they're also powerful because they have the trans lobby behind them.
Yeah, this giant like network and all this institutional power and stuff like that. And you might be like, wow, that sounds like they're making a case for the enemy being both strong and weak whenever it's most convenient, and you're like, okay, well, that's actually a signifier of, like, kind of like fascist ideology or whatever. And then, like, just learning about these things, and then you might be able to spot these things happening and be like, okay, well, these guys are definitely something to look out for,
like if Posey Parker weren't just openly working with neo-Nazis, like, it would still be pretty easy to spot her as a fascist, because she does constantly rely on ideas of tradition and of, like, what women are supposed to be. She doesn't fucking care whatsoever about, like, there's also a certain level of, like, the stuff that Sartre says about anti-Semites definitely applies to every fascist. Like, just Posey Parker will claim that she's working with lesbians and defending lesbians, and then there's like a clip kind of doing the rounds right now where she, like, points out someone who's protesting her and is like, he doesn't even look gay. And it's like, you don't care about gay people at all. This is such a thin farce. As for making the enemy both weak and strong, like, kind of already alluded to it, but, like, she'll call trans people, like, mentally ill, and say there's all these reasons why we're weak and pathetic, but also, like, she thinks, or I don't fucking care what she thinks. She says that, like, there's, like, all this institutional power behind us. As for, like, pacifism is trucking with the enemy, like her calling for men to carry guns and go into women's toilets to look for transgenders, like, that's absolutely her saying that, like, being a pacifist, not being explicitly violent to the enemy is letting everyone down. Like, that's, it's like, it's not a list that you have to use point by point and then be like, oh, it doesn't qualify the last one, so they're not actually a fascist. But, like, it is still a useful way to find all the hallmarks.
Yeah. There is an interesting thing from Eco's essay that lines up as well with what we're talking about, like the cop thing, and just with what you were just saying, where the 11th point is, everybody is educated to become a hero. And fascist ideology, heroism is the norm. This cult of heroism is strictly linked with the cult of death. And this is what we see when we see, these videos come out of these, like, there was one that I saw the other day of, it was like a cis woman that was using the bathroom, and she had begun filming in there because she was like, there's this woman at the front that is like, she's talking about me in here, and she's saying that she just saw a trans person coming in here, and that she's going to confront me, and that she's going to do all this. And she's like, I've started recording just to say, and it's like, this is the heroism that Eco is talking about, where it's like, this TERF thinks that she is the hero in the story. She's, like, being kind of emboldened to confront the enemy in this space or whatever. And obviously in the video, it just makes her look deranged, and she's obviously, and she's confronting another cis woman as well. And it's just like, like, this is the heroism that that they're emboldened to do. And this is, like, that's how they see themselves, as they're the brave heroes, the truth tellers, the, whatever. It's like, it's wild how much the transphobic, the TERF movement kind of lines up exactly with this with the fascist stuff. But it's a short essay as well, so everyone should check it.
Yes, definitely. It's like, I genuinely think that 1984 is a pretty good book, and, like, worth people reading. But, like, it is noticeable that the vast majority of people trying to say this is 1984 and are now actually fascists, because, like, they keep on going back to that shit as being like, we're the, like you just said, the truth tellers. Like, they keep on being like, we're the only ones who don't give in to this, like, new speak. And this was a thing that was, like, really noticeable for J.K. Rowling a little while ago, was used like a 1984 reference to be like, to try and say, like, they're brainwashing you to believe that men can be women or whatever. And yeah, they're constantly saying that they're, like, the only ones who will stand up and tell the truth. and it's just like, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Like, and there's so much transphobic and like far right propaganda. Well, like a lot of transphobic stuff is just straight up far right. So, but it revolt, like the messaging is all about that, telling the truth. Like over here, we've got all like, it's like reality check radio, and like against this like against the mainstream media or whatever, like everything else is lying to you, and this is the authentic place that you can get the truth from.
Posey Parker's rallies are always called "Let Women Speak," and like when cis women stand up then and speak and say "fuck you, stop being a weird transphobe," like they just ignore them because they don't want those women speaking that way. They want, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we down here there's Speak Up for Women. And recently there was Stand By Your Woman, which was this was organized by a bunch of men, most of them well-known figures within the neo-Nazi community in New Zealand, like Kyle Chapman, who was the former head of the National Front, has firebombed Marae before. Like these people. There was an event where they even said in the promotion beforehand that it will not be an opportunity for women to speak. They did actually let one woman speak for like literally like 30 seconds or something before men spoke, and just like wild fascist shit. So yeah, it's yeah, like it's 100% fashion. Like they're trying to separate themselves. They're trying to separate. They're saying like one of the most notorious New Zealand transphobes. She made a statement just before some of the meetings saying like, oh hey, actually I think some of these guys are actual Nazis, which I think it's funny to make the distinction, because it's like, yeah, but you agree with them on everything. It's just that they just actually say the quiet part loud. But the funny thing is, like, so many TERFs just attacked her over it, and they were just like, well, like, how can you say that? They say everyone's a Nazi now.
No, they're saying Heil Hitler and then doing the Hitler salute. Yeah,
like here's a bunch of photos of them wearing swastika t-shirts doing a Roman salute and shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas like some of the other TERF groups had no, like they were saying like, look at these proud men, like standing up for us as women and shit like that. It's just like, there's like one group that is like the worst, like probably like they're a group, it's like a Maori led TERF group. There's only like maybe 3 or 4 of them or whatever like that, and just seeing them completely throw their lot in with literal Nazis that have, like I said before, literally firebombed Marae before. And it's just like, what the fuck is going on in your brain? Like, what is like
meth cop brain, the worst possible brain. Yeah. Unfortunately, in the great lottery of life, you've been given the worst brain that there could be, the meth cop brain. Yeah. So I think I want to talk through more stuff that talk more about like people doing stuff outside of anti-fascist demos.
Yeah.
I want to quickly, before we do say that, I want to just say like, to people, and I'm going to reinforce this in a second as well, that like, just because we talk about there being demos where people need to be ready to like get physical because they're anticipating that it's like, literal Nazi skinheads are showing up who will attack people. Those things are usually kind of through organizing networks. People are like, hey, this one will be like this. There's not an expectation that anyone will show up. So don't show up if you aren't ready to be in a fight, basically. And like that's I don't know. I think it's important to say that because it's really worth understanding that like showing up and just being a bigger crowd than the fascist crowd is like the most important thing 99% of the time. And like people shouldn't be scared to show up to stuff, because they should understand that like you showing up is a step towards nothing happening, because fascists are cowards and they will fuck off. Like they will just fuck off with no violence if they are just massively outnumbered. Because I can't say this enough. Fascists are cowards. So like I really want to encourage our audience, like if you do, like I said a second ago, like look up what kind of anti-fascist social networking there is, that informs about when there are like demos or whatever. They will only be posting publicly about stuff that is safe to show up to, basically, because they'll be saying like anyone show up to this thing, which is a pretty clear message that they want anyone, and that means that if you are available and can get down there, you really should, and you should really like try and get other people to go down there as well. I want to be crystal clear that when it comes to trans people, like a lot of trans people just do show up already. So it's not even that trans people shouldn't have to show up. We shouldn't have to show up. Like that we are the exact people they want to hurt the most. Like we shouldn't have to show up, but like the fact is that we do, and like often the counter demo ends up being like almost entirely trans, and then it's like, I'm left thinking there are anti-fascist assemblies in London who call themselves anti-fascists, and here are some fascists and they haven't shown up, like where there are no cis people here. I just want to say, like, don't be afraid to show up to stuff that's being advertised publicly as like, let's get anti-fascists down here, because if it's being advertised publicly, that they are really not expecting anything to get to go down. And you should get down there. You should get everyone who can go down there with you, and you should get them to bring everyone they can as well, because outnumbering is so much of the entire game at these kind of things.
That's the thing. If you vastly outnumber them, then like the chances of them actually attempting anything go all the way down. I think it's generally the worst is when it's like roughly similar numbers. That's kind of when it kicks off enough. But so what we're telling you is that that I'm trying to tell you that when you're ready, you won't have to.
There you go. Perfect. You nailed it.
But no, actually, that's part of a Matrix quote. Didn't quite pull it off. Like only the true heads understood that.
I got it and liked it. But yeah, stuff everyone can do. So I want to say along the same lines that like we've kind of said in the past, like we're influencers. We're people whose faces are all over the place, and we probably would be less safe showing up to stuff. But like that's not a simple black and white truth. Like we can go to stuff. It's just like the hosts here, like we're doing one of the things that we can do in our roles, like as like social media influencers, by talking about this and trying to educate people on stuff. But like there comes a trade-off for us, and it's a similar trade-off that there is for like politicians and other public figures. Like if we go to stuff, like there is a knowledge that we're easily identifiable. It doesn't mean we can't go to stuff. Like Kira, you look up some stuff. Hey Kira, hey, go to some stuff. But like
yes, Sophie, like, thank you. Yes.
But like it's just with the knowledge that like it would be very easy for them to identify us. Which means, if I'm going to any kind of counter demo, I know for sure I'm not doing any shit, because like it would be very, very quick for them to say it was Sophie who did it. I know, because her face is all over the internet. But like I can absolutely take part in like outnumbering people, and I can also like share the thing online and try to get more people to come and outnumber them, and then I said before about like if there's like a local place that you go to, or you could think about your employer and your workplace environment, like making sure that people are on the side of the oppressed group and like aren't gonna give in to fascism, is still like practicing no pass around.
Like it's like I think like it's important to actually think of that as a like a whole kind of like a whole mentality. It's not just limited to physical confrontation with far right groups, but it's like a mindset and like a personal commitment to resist fascism, like that. I think you have to kind of express in all aspects of your life, like, and this can be like, from, the confrontational stuff at a lower level, like whether it's like, like if someone says something kind of, vaguely off color or whatever, and you like call them up on it or whatever, even if, if it's like a friend that says like something that's like kind of a shitty joke or whatever like that, to, all the way to like, educating your friends and family, like when, if there's like some kind of like, right fucking populist group that are like, you know, making headway in your area or something like that, you know. And like if you hear like your parents or, you know, like a relative or friend or whatever, like talking about them and shit like that, and just actually being like, hey, look, like, you know, this is like, these are all kind of hallmarks of fascism and shit like that, you know, just like, yeah, I think there's like, everyone kind of has a role that they can play in fighting fascism. And it's like, you kind of just have to take it where you find it, you know? And so, yeah, taking action in your own way is like, oh, you know, is a way that everyone can kind of take their own kind of steps towards anti-fascism.
Yeah, I think in America, like the shock to the system of Trump getting elected, like left a lot of people feeling like it's too late to like organize as anti-fascists, and that fascists can just like have already won an election and probably will win another one. And so they're just kind of like, what can we do? But the simple thing of like the basic thing to anti-fascism is like, and this is okay, like during the Holocaust there were literally times when Nazis were trying to arrest someone to be carted away to a camp, and bystanders were like, hey, fuck you, stop that. And those Nazis stopped doing that because like the completely pathetic defense that, you know, famously lots of Nazis made, that they were like just following orders. The way that works internally is like, I was just following orders. The people in charge told me to do this thing. How was I to know that it later would be considered a bad thing to do? And it's like, well, you're a human being and you know it's a bad thing to do. So obviously that's fucking bullshit. But in a real practical sense, like these are people who kind of they're forming a coalition of the greedy, stupid, and cruel, and like they believe they'll get away with it. And so like people showing that they're not going to get away with it in the long term makes them stop. Like it does actually make them stop. And so like it's never too late to do more anti-fascist organizing. And I just want to like really emphasize that like people who think like, well, you know, already the people I am around all the time, they're like a bunch of MAGA supporters or whatever. It's like, well, for one thing, if you go to anti-fascist organizing spots, you'll make some new friends, which will be nice. But for another, like being the person who intervenes, like when Tim just now brought up like your friend makes a shitty joke, like it can be as small as that, like being the person, being the like non-passive, being the active bystander makes such a huge difference, and is the most basic kind of form of anti-fascism, because anti-fascism is just solidarity, right? It's like in organizing, like if you are like, I'm not earning enough, right, then that's not solidarity. But if you turn to your colleague and you're like, you're not earning enough, then solidarity exists. So it's like, it doesn't even have to be people who are in a different position to you. Obviously, I will keep on saying until I'm blue in the face that for fuck's sake, cis people need to show up to these things, and I'm so pissed that most cis people don't. But trans people showing up for other trans people is still solidarity, and like anyone showing up for anti-fascist organizing is solidarity.
Yeah, I think like just a thing in general, supporting marginalized communities is like a kind of very inherently anti-fascist thing to do, even if it's like not the community that is like currently in the crosshairs or anything like that. I think just in general, just kind of helping to support any kind of like marginalized community in your area, whether it's, you know, whether it's trans people, whether it's refugees, whether it's whatever, you know, like, because these are all people that are somehow going to be in the crosshairs of both, you know, the state and of the fascists and stuff. So it's like empowering those communities and supporting them is always going to be pushing back against those things. Like, so you know, and just, you know, showing that solidarity also kind of I think in a way of like forming, you know, like especially when you're talking about on an organizational level, like forming coalitions between different groups, you know, and like solidarity and stuff like that, I think is really important. But yeah, even just on a personal level, just showing up, and you know, and yeah, like even not necessarily like physically showing up, but even just like like being aware and helping promote them, like, through your social media or whatever like that, like just getting more aware and involved with other groups that outside of your own, as well as like obviously your own.
Yeah, I want to return to this local venue thing for a second and just say, like, there's local places I go often where, like, I'm friends with the staff and, like, we chat, and something I'm planning to do is, like, talk to them about the HRC stuff and just be like, it's not at all impossible that in the UK, like, fairly soon, the Tories might just say, we're banning trans women from women's bathrooms. And, like, I just want to know that, like, you're not going to, like, give, like, truck with that at all. Like, it doesn't matter if they've got, it doesn't matter if they have, like, men's and women's bathrooms in their place. Like, this kind of legislation is there to embolden, again, like the cult of the hero shit, right? It's like, this is there to embolden fascists to take an opportunity to, like, whine to management because it's their favorite fucking thing, because it's a movement of cops, right? And, like, it's like, if there are venues that you're, like, venues that I'm regularly in and I talk to the staff and I'm, like, friends with them, like, I'm going to be talking to them to be like, I just want to know that, like, anyone who comes in here who's being like, this transgender, blah, 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 you'll be like, get fucked,
Mm-hmm. Actually, Sophie, since we're getting to the end of the stream, and normally we would start our question time, there is a question from the YouTube chat from Lily that's pertaining exactly to what you're talking about, so I might as well ask it now. Lily says, do the hosts have experience talking to local businesses about keeping their spaces trans friendly? Do you just talk to the people working there or ask for a manager? So more specific to, like, exactly how you go about doing this.
Well, there are places where I've been going there for a long time, so I just know the management already. Like, small businesses where, like, I know this cafe owner or what have you. But, like, yeah, I mean, I'm friendly with staff, like people who are working a job or whatever. Like, I try to be as friendly as possible in all situations. There's, like, when I get in taxis frequently, like, the driver will be like, is it okay if I have this station on? And I'm like, my guy, you're working right now. Like, you should get to listen to whatever radio you want. Like, I always try to just make friends with whatever staff are around. I would not go in and be like, hey, I have been going to this cafe for a long time, but I've never spoken to you before, and now I'd like to speak to your manager, because that's not going to make a good impression. But, like, what I instead would do would just be, like, be friendly, and then, like, once I feel like there is a good rapport, I would be like, hey, I want to get assurances about this thing. And then, like, if their direct response is like, look, I'll do that if I'm on shift, but, like, I can't say that for anybody else, I don't think the next move for me would be to talk to a manager. I think my next move then would be like, well, I'm going to keep on making friends with other members of staff. And, like, if I have now spoken to, like, enough of them at some point, like, and they kind of keep on saying that, then I might be like, cool, I now have assurances from enough people that I know this is the case. Now I'd like to speak to a manager, and I can be like, look, I already know that your staff are kind of on board with this, but I'd like there to be a kind of institutional thing from the venue here. Yeah, and, like, specifically the assurance has to do with if there is a fascist giving a trans person grief for any reason. And it's not like, I've brought up this EHRC thing a couple of times now, and, like, definitely I would like assurances from places that I go that, like, if trans women are legally banned from women's bathrooms, like, they won't uphold that. But, like, the broader assurance is just, like, I want to know that that you can recognize, like, someone being a dick to a trans person, you will stop it.
Yeah, totally.
Great.
I've never had to, like, go into a place of business and be like, hey, look, like, if this happens, like, what will you do or whatever like that? Because it's the kind of thing, like, I tend to, like, a lot of the cafes I go to, like, I kind of just become friends with people and, like, kind of get to know a little bit of their politics anyway. And most of the time, like, I always find that, like, most of the places I go to, when I get talking to people, that they already, like, swing pretty far left or whatever.
Especially staff working places. Like, that's the thing. Like, they're actually not gonna be Tories if they're working at a bar. Like, this is the thing about the we went back to the Marquis of Granby a little while ago and, like, chatted to the staff there, and they were like, yeah, we hate these fucking Tories. They're dreadful. And it's like, a place can be, the clientele can be, like, really right wing, and still often, like, the staff are actually left wing, because it's normal to be, it's actually normal. It's just normal to be left wing, actually.
Yeah. I've heard wild things like, like people on Twitter being like, or like people at cafes being like, oh yeah, like I follow you on Twitter, or like, there was like something I said once about going to a cafe or whatever, and like the barista like popped up on Twitter and was like, oh yeah, like that was me, like I didn't want to say anything, but,
Yeah.
like so I feel like there's like a lot of people that already swing pretty far left, but like I mean I've been into businesses before in our like the area around where my shop is, when the whole area got like stickered and posted. It's happened a couple times by a like a neo-Nazi group that's active in Auckland, and like I'll go and take them all down or whatever like that, and just like talk to the local people, because they'll see, like they come out and they're like, oh, what are you doing, and I kind of point out like, oh, these guys, like this is who they are, this is what they do, like this is, like they were tied in with the the Christchurch shooter and things like that, blah blah blah, just giving a little heads up or whatever, and just saying like, like, hey, if you see anyone putting these up, like if you can get a photo or something, then I would love to, I'd love to see that.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Just in like a general kind of like community kind of defense,
community
kind of
safety kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely.
This is a great segue into our another question from Sky.
Well, I'm sorry. Could I just, I have something to add to the stickering thing, and I just really want to say it. Like, I think that's really great, especially about when you see fascist stickers around, making people aware. That's something I've also already done with local venues that I'm a regular at, where I'll be like, hey, just so you know, like someone put this sticker up like on the road that your cafe is on, and this is what this sticker means. Like, this is a QR code to Posey Parker's website. You know how to Posey Parker before? Okay, here she is standing in front of a bunch of Sieg-heiling Nazis. Cool, now you understand who Posey Parker is. If you see these, please take them down, I think it's just really worth emphasizing that it's a full way of life being anti-fascist, like that you can apply it in absolutely, like, not all settings, but you can be ready to apply it in all settings. Like, something I do, which doesn't really make the most based thing this week section, because like if it did, I would have had a very quiet week, is like if I'm in the movies and like they start playing like an army recruitment ad, or like a lot of them recently have been like Met Police recruitment ads, like my policy is someone should be yelling at the screen in any cinema where they are playing like fascist recruitment propaganda, and if no one else is doing it, it's gonna be me. So like that's something I always do, and that's something you can bring to like situations, is just like you see shit like that and you just tell everyone who's around you it's wrong. Like there are like undercover cop cars here now that like they used to be unmarked cars, but now there are tons of unmarked cars that like just look like someone's just like used car dealership like car, but then like suddenly there are like blue lights flashing and there's a siren, right? And then you look and you can see that there are like police in fucking body armor in there. Like whenever one of those like suddenly like lets the siren off, like I start yelling to everyone around me, like that's fucking ridiculous. Like are we all just okay with the fact there are all these like unmarked cars now that like we don't even know are police? Like someone could just put fucking blue lights on their car and go and abduct people, and we're supposed to be cool with that? Like fuck that, that's wrong. And like I can't say I make lots of friends doing that stuff, but it's something I stick to doing, like because like someone, it's the same thing about like the kind of bystander passive versus active like mindset. Yeah, that's what I wanted to add. Sorry, Kira, I didn't mean to like, I just really wanted to say about like kind of being an active bystander is really important.
Yeah, well, I mean that feeds really well into the question from Sky Glittering. So are there small anti-fascist things I can do on a day-to-day basis? I try to sticker around my town whenever I'm out, since it's easy to do, even when I'm depressed and struggling. But I'm wondering if there's any other small thing I can do when there aren't any protests or demonstrations. And that's what you were just talking about. I don't know if there's anything else.
Sorry, I should have just let you read the question.
It's okay. I don't know if there's anything else that that maybe Tim wanted to add, or any final thoughts you had, Sophie? Because by the way, everyone's specific, I'm going to just interject and say everyone's specific brand of this is going to change depending on who they are. Sophie yelling at a screen in a movie theater, while awesome, may not be someone's, it may be a little daunting and very daunting, maybe super anxiety provoking, maybe even panic attack causing for somebody else, right? So like, just to be clear, as much, I'm not trying to downplay anything Sophie said. I think it's awesome, and I aspire to be that. Honestly, like that for me is like awesome, and something that I that fits really firmly well into like who I am. I'm the type of person that should be doing that, right? But not everyone's like that. So I don't know if there's anything else y'all wanted to add to answer this question.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like it's always going to be a result of like the conditions of your area, right? You know, like it's kind of like I guess as like, you know, anti-fascism. Like, I mean, it is like reacting to fascism, but it's also like you want to kind of if you're kind of like really, I guess, like living it as like you know, like as part of your kind of core beliefs and stuff like that, even if there is no fascism, like, well, you know, like active fascist groups organizing in your area or whatever like that, I think the next step is to be kind of like thinking about, I guess, like fascism outside of like, you know, like the direct organizing of fascist groups and thinking about more like, you know, things that the government does, imperialism and things like that. And just, yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, there's, I think that kind of brings you more to like general kind of like leftist organizing sort of stuff. Yeah, but I would say just, yeah, the small things are just like, you know, just trying to not let the small things slip is, I think is a good thing to do. Yeah. And even just like getting in touch with and following anti-fascist groups, maybe if there's none in your town, like a little bit further afield. Like a lot of the time there'll be like Twitter pages or Instagram pages kind of set up. There's like a whole bunch down here. Yeah, and just kind of being aware of what's going on, because you know, you never know, like there's been some turf rallies in like weird small towns down here recently.
Right.
So yeah, you never know what's gonna pop up.
Yeah, I think I'd also say, like, when we've been saying this, we like went up saying this practically every episode, but like meet your neighbors is also anti-fascist praxis, because like at least, well, you know, at least for me, like in the project of me meeting my neighbors that's been going on for a long time now, like and being friendly with them, like a conscious motivation for me is like a way I could die is my neighbors turning me into some kind of fascist like thing. And if I've met my neighbors and I say hi to them regularly, then I feel more confident that those neighbors specifically will not do that. Yeah, and like if you aren't, you know, the targeted minority or whatever, then meeting those neighbors and when you are like on good terms with them, being like, hey, like you know this stuff's all bullshit, right? Like you or like, you know, kind of promoting community helps with that stuff enormously, because like if you're in community with those people who are targeted, and then like you also become in community with your neighbors, then just by kind of being around each other, they'll not be fascists. Yeah.
We've got a couple of other things people putting out in the chat from Chloe and Shafiq mentioning also helping out unhoused people and disabled people as well is also like very anti-fascist, because they are like people that homeless and also disabled are often targets of, you know, like of fascist movements, and they are both groups that a lot of people tend to you know, it's like you get a lot of people that would be like, I'll get involved when it relates to me, you know, and particularly people that are living rough out on the street, and depending on food banks and stuff like that, you know, not really on anyone else's radar for a lot of people. So helping out and organizing around the needs of of people that are sleeping rough is also is very anti-fascist.
I have one final, or was that another thing from the chat?
There's wait, are you looking at the questions? Because there's two questions left, but there's one of them I feel like we've kind of answered already from Just Plain Garrick. They asked, I have a question. I'm disabled with limits to my mobility, which makes it difficult to make it out to rallies and events that help physically. What else can I do in my community to help other anti-fascists? I feel like we've probably touched on that quite a bit in numerous ways.
If you were really determined and wanted to do an enormous amount and had the free time to do it and so on, like a high energy thing would be engaging in anti-fascist research. I know several people who are like physically less like able to get to rallies or whatever and suffer from mobility issues, who spend like quite a bit of their time researching, like, being the mole inside the Telegram channel or whatever, telling people what's going on. That's like something that's hardcore that people can do. But yeah, I mean, like, also just kind of all the things we've been saying about, like, stickers and talking to people and whatever. Like,
yeah, there's people I know that aren't able to get out to rallies and things like that, but yeah, they're the ones that are like combing through the footage that the TERFs put up and finding out, like kind of like looking through all that kind of stuff, like, yeah, sitting in the Telegram channels, just monitoring things and stuff like that, and just like, dedicating a little bit of time every day just being like, okay, cool, I'm going to go through and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to like take notes, I'm going to take screenshots, I'm going to record things and stuff. And yeah, like, it's like, it's super cheesy, but it's like, what was Commissioner Gordon's daughter in Batman?
Barbara. Yeah. Well, she would up being the Oracle. Yeah.
Oracle.
You can be the Oracle if you're anti-fascists. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And she's like, she's on the computers, she's like, doing all the intel and stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, like, that's totally a thing. And I mean, like, there's like, obviously there's like many different kinds of disabilities. So some people like have trouble kind of, like focusing on things for long periods. So, there's, it gets a little bit trickier there, but I would say even just like dedicating a small amount of time, just being like, okay, cool, I'm gonna do like, like half an hour where I just go through this or whatever. And I think that, like, there's like, I legitimately believe there's like a place in all of these movements for everyone. And if you're having trouble kind of finding a place within like an org or something like that, I don't know, it's like you don't necessarily have to get like, like too, like, if it's like really if it's difficult for you because you're like neurodivergent, you have trouble kind of like I guess, like, going to meetings and talking to people and all that kind of stuff like that. There are a lot of places these days that like have, like they will do meetings via like Discord and stuff like that. Like, I know a bunch of like anti-fascist groups and stuff, and they do it via Zoom and Discord and all that kind of stuff. So you don't have to be like super active. You can just sit there and you can like listen and you can talk. And even like some people will be listening on the call and just talking in the chat. They won't be, talking because they can get a little bit nervous and stuff. So I think that there's, there's space for everyone to kind of fit in.
Yeah. I feel like that, and this is, sorry, Sophie, I just, just really quick, we have one more question. No more questions, everyone.
I was going to read out the question.
Oh, yeah. No, go ahead and read it out.
I'll read it because I haven't read out a question yet, so I'll read out.
Okay, well, y'all been doing all the work today, so I wanted to make sure that I could do a little bit of something.
Kira, I have a job for you, following on from this question. So Pick on a Toby from the YouTube chat has said, how do you develop the confidence to put yourself out there? I start shaking and tripping over my words when there's like more than 3 strangers in a social situation, let alone political. So like the main thing I have to say, this question is clearly about like showing up to rallies, right? And I want to say, like, if you are imagining that you're going to show up to a rally and like yell at a TERF or yell at a neo-Nazi and like have a heated argument with them, you would be doing the wrong thing at the rally anyway. Right? Because like when it comes to like drowning out their side of the rally so they can't like make their fucking their speeches and record their content or whatever, because that's what they're there for, like it creates general background noise that can still be recorded over if there are lots of people just having different conversations and all like yelling at each other. Like if you look at I don't know, Charlottesville or whatever, you see like people who you can hear clearly because the background noise is just lots of different voices doing different shit. If you look at people trying to record their speeches inside a Posey Parker rally, what you hear is the anti-fascist bloc all chanting in unison, and that's all you can hear because it comes through clearly. That's actually the disruptive thing. That and like noisemakers, like some people bring like bike horns and stuff like that to like make loud sounds, right? So one thing I'd say, like, in terms of developing confidence, is like knowing going in that you aren't actually required to kind of be an individual person who's so confident and like making your arguments or whatever. What you need to do is be part of the block, right? And so one of the things that I found really confidence building is knowing what the chants are going to be. So Kira and I are going to teach you some of the 3 of the most common anti-fascist chants. All right, so Kira, you're going to be our chant leader. and you're gonna do the first half of a chant, and then I'm gonna respond to it, and we'll do it like a couple times. And if people in chat already know the answer to this one, they can put it in chat as well, so that we're all doing the chant together. Kira, you say alerta, alerta.
Alerta, alerta.
Anti-fascista. You go again.
Oh,
No. You go. You're getting it. It's okay.
I got it. There.
Yeah,
alerta, alerta.
Anti-fascista.
Alerta, alerta.
Anti-fascista. And that's the first chant, right? So one person will say alerta, alerta, like, hey, pay attention. And then the whole group will say anti-fascista. Okay? The next one is you say, we bleed black and red.
We bleed black and red.
Anti-fascist till we're dead.
We bleed black and red.
Anti-fascist till we're dead. Okay, those ones are call and response. There is another one which is pure Italian, and you should know what it's. No, it's okay. It's because they have some of the best anti-fascist chants. Go figure, because of that guy they turned upside down. So this one isn't call and response, so you need to know it going in, right? But it goes, siamo tutti antifascisti, and it means we are all anti-fascists.
Siamo tutti antifascisti?
Like anti-fascist, but with an I on the end, right? Antifascisti.
Antifascisti.
Okay, so it's siamo tutti antifascisti.
Siamo tutti antifascisti.
You nailed it. That's exactly it. Now you're ready to go. Now you're ready to go to a counter demo and chant that with people.
Awesome.
And all these people in the chat, they're ready for it as well.
Okay, I have a question. Are these England specific? Because I've been to protests in America, like the BLM uprisings, like we created the Chaz, and I've never heard any of these before.
Okay, they're pretty common ones around various different places. I don't think, for the fact that two of them are Italian should be an indicator that they're not English ones. But yeah, they're just kind of around. They might be European specific. I don't know. Like, Tim, have you heard any of these before?
I have heard them, but they're definitely not like the most popular ones that we would hear.
No, I'm not saying they're the most popular. I'm saying they're like classic ones, really.
Yeah.
Another reason, and to link this back to a question about confidence as well, another reason that's really good to know about some reliable chants that some people might know is that whenever there's a lull in the crowd and your job is to be making as much noise as possible, it's sometimes people just run out of the rhythm of a chant, and it's important to know something you can jump in with quickly and get people to keep going. So that's why call and response is especially really, really useful, because sometimes you get sick of singing "You're Not Being Silenced" if you're in the Daily Mail over and over again, and people just kind of naturally run out of energy. But people will carry on chanting if you then go alerta, alerta, right? So this is another one I really like is "Who keeps us safe? We keep us safe," and who protects the fascists? Cops protect the fascists. Those are good ones.
I like the "Whose streets are streets? Whose streets are streets?"
So
I like singing that in my head when I'm walking down the street and I see a cop. I was like, ugh.
Yeah, that's a very good one. The big problem is that for English people, for people cursed with the disease of being English, that sounds like you're chanting whose streets are streets. And I mean this, if you're in a crowd of people chanting that, it really sounds like it. It doesn't help that we're a bunch of queers, so we literally just start chanting our streets as we find it funny as hell. But yeah, so yeah.
Sometimes you get musicians showing up to protest as well, which is great as well. To there's a couple of little bands that will assemble and play at protests over here. There's they're organized things as well, and they're they play specifically to the kind of instruments in a way that is good for kind of keeping everyone in rhythm and stuff. And it's been it's been pretty impressive at protests and marches and stuff before them, how it's kind of a little bit more of a rabble or whatever, and then as soon as they start going, everyone kind of gets in line and in step and stuff. And most of the time it's something pretty basic, like it'll just be a chant and then they'll have like a couple beats in between or something like that. But I've seen everything. There was like one dude at one that I went to years ago singing Bella Ciao really loud, like he must have had like an operatic voice or something like that. Which is it's like an Italian song. It started off, it was like a song kind of like, it was like this really like it was like a song about these workers in the field and like the terrible conditions and how like they're basically wasting their lives along, like really a class focused kind of song. But then it became really popular after World War II. I think it was like the myth was that it was like sung by the partisans, the Spanish partisans, but apparently it wasn't. But it was like after that, it kind of I think someone like kind of like wrote it into a book or an article or something, and then people mistakenly think it comes from them, but it's actually from post World War II, and it's like this kind of, I guess, like romantic song about this partisan fighter and like going to war knowing that he might die, and like if he will die, then it's like to bury him up on this mountain by where he kind of like grew up or whatever. But it's kind of like saying that it's like, but this is like as a partisan, like I'm going to die for freedom sort of thing, and that like that's more important. But that everyone should see this flower that grows on my grave and like remember what we did sort of thing.
Hell yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
So anyway,
so I think that's most of the discussion,
right? Yeah. All right.
Oh, someone's just put in chat, bottoms, switches, tops, we all hate cops. There's a version of that I can't say on Twitch because of terms of service, but it's one word and then another word, and then bottoms, tops, we hate fascists, we hate cops. And that's one we do. But yeah, I've been saying that there's homework this week, and the homework this week is to think about places where you can be an anti-fascist in your everyday life. It could be little stuff. You could go yell in the cinema. You could take down stickers if you see any stickers. You could let people know about those stickers who are around, who could also take down the stickers. Or it could be, bigger stuff that anyone can do, like showing up to a counter demo. But yeah, it's just the homework this week is generally like trying to seek opportunities for anti-fascism and realizing how it can be part of your everyday life. Yeah, cool.
I actually just saw someone just dropped in chat an enormous door slamming said, I'm pretty fond of Tutira Mai Na Iwi, which is Maori kind of like it's like a folk song about, it's basically about coming together and like standing together as people. Like it literally, the lyrics of the song are about like standing together and kind of like marching together and like loving everyone and to be united and stuff. But it is like this really good like kind of call and response kind of thing. But it's like, and you learn it in primary school, so like everyone down here knows it. So when it goes off at like there's like memes about it and stuff. But yeah, so when at a protest, it is like very common. It's like super, super common. Like everyone, like Zaphos in chat is like said, there's like the main line is like Tutira Mai Na Iwi, and then everyone recalls with Aue. And so that's what Zaphos is saying, Aue in the chat.
Oh, I love
like
that.
The call and the response. But
cool.
Yeah, no. Anyway,
cool. I mean, thank you for telling us about that.
Yeah.
I think we should tell the chat about the Patreon. .com/red_planet.
Yeah, let's do that.
The sound of every host bringing up the Patreon so we remember the words.
I should just bookmark it.
Yeah, surely. I one of these days I'll use my brain. Sprite mode, £2 a month. You can get started with your support for Red Planet by becoming a Sprite. Benefits include the sacred and forbidden knowledge that you are helping the Red Planet team, early access to VODs, access to the Red Planet Discord. There is a Red Planet Discord for patrons. It's very cool. I need to say also, Conrad and I are working on a little bit of extra content behind the scenes. I don't know what tier it's going to apply to, but there is going to be some extra content for patrons is going to start appearing soon, and we'll be able to promo that properly when it's a thing. But Kira, what's next after Sprite mode?
The next one is Goblin Mode. That's $10 US a month. Everyone loves a goblin. We all get a little goblin mode from time to time. Complete your gobology by going goblin mode with everything from the Sprite mode. and a pack of cool Red Planet stickers for you to stick in legal places and only places like that, and access to the exclusive Red Planet Discord hangouts, which we've had a few of, and they're really fun and great. You get to hang out while we watch stuff and be best friends with us. So
Star Trek should be the next one.
What if I wanted to go a little harder, Tim?
Well, then we have Beast Mode, which is it's $20 American a month, but it's about 38 New Zealand a month. And yeah, holy shit, are you actually gonna go Beast Mode? Well, then we can offer you all the stuff from the lower tiers and pin badges. Yep, pin badges. We are excellent new Red Planet pin badge literally everywhere. It is completely cool and good to do. So yeah, it includes all the Discord benefits and everything of the lower ones.
Hell yeah.
And what about sicko mode? Who can tell us? Who amongst ye can tell us about sicko mode?
Well, sicko mode is the highest possible tier of support, and it does mean that you are based a Chad and or Stacy, an Antifa super soldier. It means you're going to literally bring about the revolution. And it's £94 a month. I think it's $100 a month. What is it, like 190-ish US New Zealand dollars?
189. Yeah.
189
New Zealand dollars.
And that's obviously a lot of money. So if you support us this much, we can only really reasonably offer you all the stuff from the lower tiers, plus a very special thank you message at the end of every stream. So to JBP, our current sicko, thank you. You're based.
Shout out
cool.
to JBP.
And a Chad and or Stacy and an Antifa super soldier.
Oh, both.
And you're bringing about the revolution. I said and or.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's all of our patrons. Please check out the Patreon. There's a lot of exciting stuff coming up for the Patreon, and if we hit our next goal, we can get an editor, which would help the growth of the show more than I can possibly explain. Please check out the Patreon and share it around if you haven't already. But Tim, what about finding more Tim? Which is the number one complaint I get from chat, is that they're like, I love Tim, I need more Tim. Where Tim?
Well, real foreheads can find me here on Twitch and on YouTube as Conquest of Dread, or over on Twitter as at Dread Conquest, for as long as Twitter still exists. What about Kira? Where can we find Kira?
You can find all of my links in my link tree. My link tree is Kira Chats. You can find the link to my link tree if you want in my Twitter bio. It's twitter.com/Kira Chats. My Twitch is twitch.tv/Kira Chats. My Discord is discord.gg/Kira Chats. Kira Chats everywhere. And also there's many links to my link tree that I cannot, for terms of service reasons, elucidate any further to you. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You should check it out.
But they're the best links.
That's right. That is correct. But what if I wanted to find my friend Sophie?
Oh my goodness. Well, I also have a link tree. It's linktree.ee/Sophie from Mars, all one word. The most important thing you will find there is my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Sophie from Mars, but you'll find all my stuff there too. So go to my link tree, you'll find all my stuff. But if you go to my Patreon, I have a big project I've been working on for like 18 months. It's called The World Is Not Ending. It's finally coming to a head. I've got like almost all of my mushroom time lapses. I got like Nats doing little paintings and shit. It's popping off, and it's going to be up on Patreon for like a considerable period after I finish making it. So if you want early access to that, that's the place to go. I also am making a video called We Bleed Black and Red. Kira, can you guess what that's about? That's right. Well, it's like all the stuff we've been saying today, but like in a scripted format. So that'll be up on there too soon. And I'm also making a little video about my trip to Armenia and surgery that will also be up there. So lots of stuff going on my patreon.com/Sophie from Mars if you want to go over there. That's it from us. Next week we're talking to Trans Safety
and our
Network.
Friend Mule.
That's true. Okay, Mule also is around. He's DJ Mule and all the stuff. I don't know his exact links. Does he have a link tree?
He has a link tree. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go to his link tree. It's DJ Mule. DJ MUEL.
Perfect.
There it is. We love our little peanut. Sorry, Peanut, if you're watching, we love you. All right. Anyways, see ya next week
with Trans Safety Network. Okay. Bye.
Bye. It was so chaotic.
Yeah.
All
I
right,
love
I can't.
chaos.
I actually have to go as my mom was going to be here in
Yeah.
like 2 minutes.
Cool, no worries.
Okay.
But
All right.
I gotta go. Okay,
All right.
because we're super